Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight, we're venturing deep into the heart of Texas, where the roads don't just lead to forgotten places, they lead to things best left undisturbed. These aren't highways you'll find in travel guides. These are backroads, cut-off trails, and twisted lanes where the locals drive faster. Or not at all. This is 20 true Texas roads locals avoid after dark. From screams in the mesquites to shadowy figures that keep pace just beyond your headlights, these stories are based on chilling accounts from drivers who swear they saw something no map can explain and no daylight can erase. But before we start the engine, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake. They leave without subscribing. And when they do, they miss the most disturbing, spine-tingling tales that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because once you're sure, on these roads, turning back isn't always an option. So, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Tell me in the comments, because someone near you may have taken one of these roads and never come back the same. Now buckle up. The road ahead isn't empty. It's waiting. Let's dive. I used to work long-haul service calls between Midland and San Angelo. A lot of flatland, a lot of heat, and a hell of a lot of nothing once the sun went down. My route used to cut across a back road that most people don't even know exists anymore. Devil's Hollow Road. Just a stretch of blacktop carved into a patch of mesquites that twist up like veins under the skin of the world. I took it because it cut my time by half an hour. That's worth something when you're dead tired and 3 hours from home. It was always quiet. No houses, no farms, no power lines. Just the occasional set of eyes in the dark, maybe a possum, maybe a deer, maybe something else. But I didn't mind the silence. Until the night I heard it. That night started like any other clear sky. Dashboard lit soft green, my thermos sitting half empty in the Q folder. I was coming back from a busted well pump outside Sterling City. It was past midnight when I hit the cutoff to Devil's Hollow. I remember checking the sky, no moon, just stars and more stars. Not a cloud in sight. The mesquites looked black and knotted against the horizon like a tangle of limbs. I drove in with the windows up, a sea on low, the radio off. It felt still. Too still. About 5 miles in, I noticed at first not sound, but the absence of it. My tires weren't crunching gravel anymore. No hum of bugs outside. No wind. It was like the whole world had gone underwater. Then the scream started. It didn't come all at once. It crept in, distant at first, like someone calling out way down the road. A woman. Or something that could pass as one. The sound was twisted high. Shrill, ragged at the edges like torn cloth. It wasn't the scream of someone scared. It was the scream of someone who'd been screaming too long. Worn out. Wet in a way that made my stomach turn. I thought maybe it was an animal. A bobcat maybe. But it kept going. Unbroken. No breath. No shift. It stayed at the same pitch, and it got louder with every bend in the road. I pressed down on the gas. I didn't mean to. My foot just did it on its own, like my body already knew what my brain was trying to deny. I kept telling myself it was nothing. A trick of sound. A weird echo in the valley. But it was following me. At every mile marker, the scream stayed the same distance behind me. Never gaining, never fading, just constant. Like it was pacing the truck. At mile 8, I saw something out the passenger window. Just for a second. A flash of pale between the mesquite branches. I didn't look again. I didn't want to know what it was. I felt cold, like the air in the cab had dropped 10 degrees. My fingers were stiff on the wheel. My breath came out in fog, even though it was 85 degrees outside. The scream rose. Louder now, more frantic. like it knew I could hear it and it wanted me to turn around. I thought about stopping. Something in me wanted to, like an itch you can't reach. But every instinct I had screamed louder than the thing in the trees. Keep going. Don't stop. Don't even slow down, Dot. Then came the worst part, Dot. It moved. Not just the sound it. Something started running alongside the truck. I didn't see it straight on, just in flashes. Long pale legs cutting through the brush, faster than anything that should have been able to keep up. The scream didn't waver, didn't shake. Just one solid, piercing wail that seemed to come from inside my skull. I floored it. 80, 90. The mesquites blurred by. And still it ran. Still it screamed. Then, right before the last bend, it stopped. Not slowed. Not faded. Stopped. Silence fell like a stone. The tires hissed over the last mile. I kept looking in the mirror. Nothing. Nothing behind me but the road. And the dark and a faint dust trail catching starlight. I hit pavement again just outside Carlsbad and didn't stop until I reached a lit gas station with a broken ice machine and a security light that buzzed like a dying fly. I sat there for a long time. Didn't get out. Didn't touch my coffee. I just sat and tried to breathe. That was 3 years ago. I never took Devil's Hollow again, not even in daylight. I reroute through Christoval or sometimes even all the way around through Eden if I have to. People laugh when I tell them. Some say I was tired, delirious. Maybe I fell asleep at the wheel. Maybe I dreamed it, but then I met a rancher from the area. We got to talking about old roads, backways, and shortcuts. When I mentioned Devil's Hollow, he went quiet, real quiet. Then he said, "You heard it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He told me the legend in that slow, steady voice of his. About a girl in the 1920s, left to die by her husband after a drunken fight on their wedding night. He drove her down that road and pushed her out of the car into the mesquites. They say she crawled through the brush, barefoot, in her torn dress, screaming his name until her voice broke. They found her body 3 days later, blood dried black under her nails from clawing the earth. And every now and then, when the moon's gone and the air holds its breath, someone drives down Devil's Hollow and hears her screaming still. I don't tell people the rest. That when I got home that night, long after the engine cooled, I found something under the passenger side mirror. A long, thin scrap of white lace, tied around a branch of mesquite. Still damp. Still smelling faintly of something sweet, like perfume. Or formaldehyde. They found the car 2 days after the last storm had passed through Trinity County. It had rained hard that night, and the thick red clay along County Road 666 had turned to sludge, burying the tires of the old blue Saturn halfway to the rims. It sat off to the side, partially hidden by a curtain of twisted yaupon and saplings. The front end nosed into the ditch as if it had tried to turn around and failed. Every door hung open wide like the car was caught mid-scream. The keys were still dangling from the ignition, windshield smeared with grime and a long streak of something darker than mud. It was that streak that caught Sheriff Knox's eye first. The sheriff had been called by a pipeline worker who drove the old backroads from Groveton to Corrigan every morning. The man didn't stop, just slowed, took a photo through the rain-dappled glass and made it to the station looking pale and quiet. Knox rolled out there with Deputy Marino a little after 10. The sun was high and hot, bugs thick enough in the air to hum. The sedan was exactly where the man said, maybe 8 miles down County Road 666, past the old Carter farm that had gone to ruin after the fire in 98. No sign of the driver or passengers. No wallets, no cell phones. Just the car keys and claw marks that stretched deep across the roof and over the trunk like something massive had dragged a hand across it in frustration. Or warning. Marino was the first to speak after circling the vehicle. "You see any prints?" she asked, crouching near the front passenger side. "Nothing human anyway." Knox didn't answer. He was staring into the woods, lips drawn thin. There was a smell, not rot, exactly, not the stink of death, but something faintly metallic and wet, like the air after a lightning strike. It prickled. The hairs on the back of his neck. They had the car towed and ran the plates. It belonged to a woman named Tracy Randall out of Huntsville. She'd been missing 3 days, last seen leaving a Dairy Queen in Lufkin, reportedly heading back to her apartment. Her friend said she liked scenic drives, took weird back roads to clear her head. But County Road 666 wasn't a place people stumbled on, not by accident. You had to know it was there. And even then, you had to want to take it. Locals didn't talk about the road much. Not because they were scared, at least not out loud, but because it had a reputation. The kind that didn't need exaggerating. There were stories, old ones, going back to the 1930s. A bus full of church kids overturned. An escaped convict that hung himself from a tree whose roots bled sap the color of wine. A dog that barked at shadows until it tore its own throat open. But those were just stories. Or they had been, until now. Knox filed the report, called it suspicious circumstances, and told the girl's parents what he could. No evidence of foul play, no remains. The car didn't look ransacked, just abandoned, with an unnatural kind of urgency. It was like everyone inside had opened their doors at the same time and stepped out into the woods, willingly. That night, Knox couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the marks, how deep they were, too deep for a raccoon or stray dog. Marino had run her fingers over them and said, jokingly, "Must have been a bear." But no bears in that part of East Texas, not anymore. And even if there had been, no bear leaves a trail like that. Perfectly spaced. Deliberate. A week passed. Then another car vanished. This one, a Ford F-150, last seen turning off FM 3178 around dusk. They found it in almost the same spot. Front end in the ditch, doors open, no blood, no driver. But this time, there were scratches on the inside of the windshield. Long ones, curving down toward the passenger seat. And the glove box had been ripped off clean. By then, word started spreading. People on the Facebook community boards in Trinity and Groveton started calling it the devil's turnoff. Parents warned their teenagers not to go joyriding anywhere near that road. Someone posted drone footage of the stretch where both vehicles had been found. The trees along that curve leaned inward unnaturally, like they'd grown toward something. Like they were waiting. Knox wanted to shut the whole road down, but it wasn't that simple. County jurisdiction, limited resources, and technically there hadn't been a crime. Nothing provable. Still, he put up a warning sign. Dead end ahead. Do not enter. But people didn't listen. 2 weeks later, a group of college kids from Sam, Houston decided to test the legend. 3 of them. They live-streamed it whole ride broadcast on TikTok, with shaky phone footage and grainy headlights cutting through the darkness. They joked, laughed, even brought a bottle of Jack Daniels. The stream ended abruptly at 11:42 p.m., just as one of the passengers' girl in the back seat started to scream. The last thing visible before the screen went black was a glimpse of something moving across the road, fast and low. The footage was pulled from the platform within an hour. Cops never found the car. Or the kids. That was the tipping point. Knox started camping out by the turnoff in his cruiser. Just sitting in the dark with his headlights aimed into the tree line, radio off, coffee going cold in the cup holder. He wanted to see what was taking them. Needed to. He even had game cams installed up and down the shoulder, but every time someone vanished, the cameras glitched, Static. Files corrupted. Always the same window of time between 11:30 and midnight. Always near the same bend. It started eating at him. He stopped shaving. Stopped calling his daughter back. Moreno noticed. Tried to get him to step back, take a week off. It's not your job to fight what you don't understand, she'd said. But that's just it. Knox wanted to understand. Because some nights, sitting in the dark, he heard things. Low rustling through the trees. Breathing that didn't belong to any living thing. And once, just once, he swore he saw eyes. Reflective, too high for an animal, too far apart for a man. Staring back from the woods. And the longer he looked, the more he realized they weren't just watching. They were waiting. Daring him. The final straw came on a Tuesday night in August. A thunderstorm had rolled through, hard and fast, and as Knox sat by the bend in the road, a figure walked out of the woods. Barefoot. Female. Covered in mud. He jumped out, gun drawn, shouting. She didn't flinch. Just looked at him, trembling. Skin pale as wax. It was Tracy Randall. Only it wasn't. Her eyes were wrong. Unfocused. Her voice cracked when she spoke. Just 2 words. He's hungry. Then she turned, walked back into the trees, and vanished. No sound, no trace, not even footprints. Knox quit the next morning. Moreno took over the file. She sealed it. Shut the road down officially. County had a crew bulldoze mounds of dirt and fallen trees across both ends. Still, hikers and wanderers kept finding ways in. And the disappearances continued, less frequent, but they happened. One every few months, always at night. Always? Without a sound. Now, locals call County Road 666 by a different name. They call it the Hollow Mile. They say it doesn't show up on new maps anymore, like the land doesn't want to be found. They say if you drive it alone, you'll start hearing scratching. Not from outside the car, but inside, behind the dash, beneath your seat, from the back. And if you stop just for a second, every door will swing open, every light will die. And something, whatever lives out there in that stretch of haunted, clay and sick trees, will finally get what it's been waiting for, another soul to keep. Another story no one will ever get to finish. The road sign looked like any other, a weathered green rectangle nailed to a crooked post just off the shoulder. Its white lettering faded from too many summers and storms. Dead Oak Pass. That's what it said. Didn't even sound spooky, not really. But there was something about the way the oak trees on either side curled in over the road, how the light thinned out past the sign, like a shadow had already fallen before the sun could even set. I only noticed it because the GPS glitched. Sighed. I'd arrived at my destination, even though I hadn't punched one in. Just a blank screen with a pin stuck right on this spot. No rut, no data. Then it rebooted itself. That should have been the first clue. I was supposed to be heading toward a little Airbnb outside Kerrville, deep in the hill country. Last-minute trip. Some dumb impulse after a fight with my ex. Figured I'd clear my head, get off the grid. No one to call me, no one to explain myself to. Just me, a dusty rental car, and miles of Texas asphalt. But then that sign appeared, and the GPS glitched, and I felt, I don't know, compelled, like the road wanted me to go down it. I told myself it'd be a shortcut. One of those back roads that didn't show up on maps because no one bothered to pave it with anything newer than gravel. Still, it was smooth enough. No potholes, just winding curves and a thick curtain of trees on either side, oaks gnarled and ancient, their branches like fingers. I remember checking the time. 4:12 p.m. The sun was still bright, though the road seemed to soak it up. The moment I crossed under the oak canopy, the temperature dropped. I even reached over and turned off the AC. That was the second clue. I drove 15 minutes, maybe 20. The road twisted like it was trying to shake me loose. No houses, no mailboxes, no turnoffs. Just more road. But I didn't think much of it, not until I passed the same sun-bleached fence post twice. The first time I noticed a smear of rust on the barbed wire, and the second time it was unmistakable. Exact same bend in the road, same little patch of yellow wildflowers growing next to it. I slowed down just for a second. That's when the engine stuttered. Not enough to die, just a hiccup, like the car had held its breath. I kept driving. Another 15 minutes. I knew because I checked my phone again. Still no signal, no internet, no updates. I hit the steering wheel, muttering, and then I saw it, the same fence post. Again. Third time. I slammed the brakes and sat there in the middle of the road, heart pounding, trying to figure out if I'd gone in a circle. But there weren't any turns. I would have noticed. I would have felt it. The road had only gone forward. It curved left, right, uphill a little, but never split, never turned me around. And still here I was, back at that fence post. That was when the road shifted. I can't explain it well. Maybe the light changed. Maybe the trees leaned in closer. Or maybe it was the quiet. It wasn't just still, it was dead. No birds, no insects. Just the faint whisper of wind high up in the canopy, and even that sounded muffled, like I'd rolled the windows up without realizing it. I pressed the gas and started forward again, a little faster this time. My palms were sweaty. The gravel underneath didn't crunch like before. It was quieter now, duller, like the tires weren't gripping anything at all. I passed the fence post a fourth time, and that's when I knew I wasn't imagining it. But this time, something else caught my eye. Hanging on the barbed wire was a scrap of blue cloth, a shirt maybe, or a scarf. Torn, fluttering in the breeze that didn't touch my car. I almost stopped. Almost. But something in my gut screamed not to. Instead, I rolled the window down and yelled, "Is anyone out there?" My voice came back to me, quieter, like the trees swallowed it. I pushed the gas harder. Each loop after that got worse. On the fifth, the road had cracks in it. Deep ones, like roots had pushed their way up from below. The canopy darkened, thicker, closer. The air stank like wet bark and rot. I turned on my headlights, even though it was still daytime. At least it should have been. But the light was going. Not fast, not like a sunset, slower. Like someone dimmed the world a few degrees each time I passed the loop. On the sixth loop, I saw something in the trees. Just a flash of movement. Could have been an animal, but it was tall. 2 legs, pale, too pale. It disappeared before I could get a good look, but it was following the road, stepping through the underbrush, matching my car's speed. I drove faster. I didn't stop. Not even when I hit a possum or raccoon or something that darted into the road. It made a sick wet thump under the tires. I didn't look back. The 7th loop, the fence post was gone. In its place was a mailbox. Rusted, twisted shut, but it hadn't been there before. It had a name stenciled on it, the letters worn off except for a few. D__DO_K. Dead Oak, that's what it said. Like the road named itself, the shadows were thicker now. Dusk, maybe, but the sun hadn't moved in the sky. It just gave up. By the 8th loop, my headlights barely worked. They shone ahead maybe 10 feet. The trees weren't trees anymore. Not entirely. Some still had bark, yes, but others looked hollowed out, split, bleeding sap like pus. The air smelled like burned leaves and something sweeter underneath, like rot that had festered too long. I heard footsteps behind the car. Not animal, human, barefoot, slapping on gravel. But when I glanced in the rear view, nothing. Just dark dot my hands hurt from gripping the wheel. My phone battery was dying, even though I hadn't touched it. The radio crackled to life all on its own, just static at first. Then a voice, a whisper, one word, drive. I didn't wait. I floored it. The ninth loop, the sky turned orange-red, like a wildfire had lit the horizon, but there was no smoke, no heat, just that angry color bleeding through the gaps in the trees. I saw things in the woods now, figures, too tall, too thin. They didn't walk. They stood still, watching. Their eyes glowed faint, not red, white like reflecting off dead fish. And the road wasn't gravel anymore. It was soft, mushy, like soil turned to meat. The tires sank deeper. The car groaned. The dashboard. Lights flickered. My hands were shaking. I screamed. I begged. I told the road I was sorry, that I hadn't meant to trespass, that I just wanted out. The voice on the radio whispered again, "Don't stop." By the 10th loop, I saw myself. I don't know how else to say it. I passed the same curve, the one where the fence post used to be, and there I was, standing by the side of the road. Me, pale, hollow-eyed, dressed the same. Watching, not moving. My reflection didn't blink. I blinked, and it didn't. It smiled, just slightly, then raised one hand and pointed forward dot, so I drove. The road was falling apart. The trees now bent backward, their limbs cracking with unnatural joints. The light was almost gone. I couldn't tell if it was night or something else. And now there was a sound under the car, in the tires, in the air, like something breathing, slow and labored, echoing my engine. I hit the gas. The speedometer climbed. 50, 60, 70, still no end. The road just coiled tighter and tighter like a noose, and I was its neck. And then, just before I passed the start again, I understood. You can't stop. Not ever. Not once. You slow down. You hesitate. The loop resets. The road doesn't want you dead. It wants you driving. Forever. Feeding it with fear and rubber and screams. I'm still driving. If you ever see that sign, if your GPS ever glitches out near hill country, don't take the turn. Don't even look down the pass. Because once you're in, the road remembers you and it gets hungrier each time. It starts with the road, as it always does. Out near the border between Karnes and Wilson County, southeast of San Antonio, there's a stretch of blacktop the locals call Foghouse Road. It's not on any GPS, not labeled as such on state maps. It's just County Road 3276, a winding two-laner that carves through mesquite-choked farmland and forgotten ranch fences rusting in place. But everyone from Floresville to Poth knows what you mean if you say you took Foghouse after dusk. Especially in October. Especially when the fog rolls in dot, no one knows who started calling it that, but the stories go back generations. Back before the war. Back before the road was even paved. Some say a house used to sit out there, hidden deep in the trees, where an old widow took in dying men during the 1918 influenza. Some say she went mad when her children all passed in a single week, and she started breathing for them at night, one by one, until her own lungs gave out. Others say it's older than her, some ancient thing from the soil itself, something that waited until there were enough people on the land to feed on fear. But what I'm about to tell you happened to me. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't tired. I wasn't out chasing thrills like the teenagers do when the air gets cold and the fog starts to rise from the ditches. I was just trying to get home after a long night shift at the refinery outside Falls City. I was dog-tired, sure, but I knew the road. Took it hundreds of times. Still, That night, October 23rd of last year, was different. It had rained most of the evening. That kind of slow, soaking rain that makes the road sweat long after the storm passes. By the time I left the gates, the sky had gone clear, but the temperature dropped fast. When I turned off the highway onto 3276, I could already see the mist starting to form in the fields, curling low and white like it was slithering out of the grass. I remember thinking I should have taken the long way through town, but I was tired, and it was habit more than anything that guided my hands on the wheel. 10 minutes in, the fog thickened. I had to slow down to 15, then 10. I'd seen it. Bad before, sure. It hugs the road like a living thing out there, especially where the drainage ditches cut deep along both sides. They say the temperature difference between the sunken gullies and the road surface creates a natural tunnel of mist. Maybe that's all it is. But about halfway down, right after the old tin shack with the broken windmill, if you've been out there, you know the one I heard at breathing, not wind. Not tire noise, breathing, deep, wet, struggling, like someone drowning in their own chest. Like lungs filling with phlegm or water or something thicker. And not just from one direction. It came from both sides. Left and right. Like something in the ditches was keeping pace with the truck. Like something crawling in the fog. I turned down the radio. Thought maybe it was engine noise bouncing back weird. But it wasn't. The sound got louder when I slowed. Louder still. When I came to a full stop, I sat there, engine idling, headlights cutting through a wall of white. Couldn't see 10 feet. Couldn't even see the ditches, but I could hear them. 3 distinct sets of lungs. Breathing ragged, like they'd been running for miles, but never getting tired. I leaned closer to the windshield and squinted. Then I saw it, a handprint. Not outside, inside. Right on the glass in front of my face. It formed slowly like a cold finger dragging across the condensation, but I swear to God, the inside of the truck was dry. My AC had been blasting warm air the whole time, and I hadn't touched the glass. The fingers were long, too long, and narrow, with little ridges that looked more like claws than nails. The print lingered for just a moment, then vanished. Not wiped away, evaporated, like it had never been there. I slammed the truck into drive and peeled out, or tried to. The fog was so thick I could barely see the road markers, but I kept my eyes forward and didn't look to the sides, even when I heard something slap against the truck bed. Once, twice. Like wet hands hitting metal. The breathing never stopped. In fact, it got closer. At one point I thought it was coming from the back seat, but that was impossible. I'd locked the doors when I left the refinery. There was no way anyone could have gotten in without me hearing, but the breath behind my right ear, it was unmistakable. And warm. Then I started seeing them figures, shadows in the fog. Low to the ground, crawling, not walking, not animals, not people, something in between. They didn't move right. One of them pulled itself up to the edge of the ditch and just stared. I didn't see eyes, but I felt them press against my skull like thumbs into soft clay. And all the while, the breathing grew louder, more desperate. But not mine. Not mine. I made it to the end of the road in what felt like hours, though it was probably 10 minutes. The second my tires hit the gravel of County Line Road, the fog broke like it had been sliced with a knife. One moment I was surrounded. The next I was under a clear sky, stars bright overhead, and the moon shining like nothing had ever happened. I didn't go home that night. Couldn't. I parked in a gas station lot and sat there until dawn, shaking and staring at the dash. At some point, I checked the inside of the windshield. Nothing. Not even smudges. But my truck bed had handprints. Long, wet, and streaked like. Whatever made them had claws instead of fingers. I tried to tell a few people. My brother laughed. My girlfriend told me I needed sleep. The sheriff just nodded and said, "Don't stop on Foghouse." Like it was something everyone just knew. And the worst part? 2 weeks ago, I heard from a guy I used to work with. Said he took Foghouse after his own night shift. Heard breathing. Thought of me. Got so scared he called his wife on speakerphone. The whole drive. She said she heard it too raspy, right in the mic. Then the call dropped. He hasn't driven since. If you ever find yourself out there, and the fog rolls in so thick you can't see the road, don't stop. Don't slow. And whatever you do, don't look to the ditches. They breathe now. There, waiting for something. Maybe they just need someone to breathe for. Or maybe they're not breathing. Maybe they're hungry. It's the kind of story that starts with a shortcut limestone cutoff. That narrow sliver of county road snaking between decaying cattle fences and cedar thickets just outside Blanco. Locals use it to shave 8 minutes off the drive to High or Johnson City. Most folks stop using it after their first real scare, but it stays open, unpaved, and unlit. Always has. Nobody maintains it. County says it's private. Ranchers say it's not theirs. The maps can't seem to agree. There's a spot along that road just after the old Calvary Baptist ruins where the hill dips and the trees lean too close like they're listening. And that's where it starts. Your headlights go out, clean, gone, no flicker, no warning. Whether you're in a '93 Ford or a brand new electric thing from Austin, the second you pass the busted stone foundation and the rusted wrought iron cross still hanging sideways on a beam of scorched pine, your lights shut off like someone flipped a master switch buried deep underground. I first heard about it from a buddy who used to haul farm equipment up that way. Said he'd avoid limestone cutoff like it had landmines. Swore to God that he passed through at 12:11 a.m. one night lights. Snuffed out, dashboard flickering, engine stalling every few feet like it was choking on something invisible. He coasted blind for nearly 2 miles. Claimed something brushed against his truck window 3 times. Each swipe heavier than the last. Said it felt like wet leaves or fingers. He didn't look. I didn't believe him. Not then. Then came October 17th, just last year. I had a falling out with my girl, needed a drive. Something aimless, something long enough to kill a mood. Ended up west of Blanco after midnight. Sky was bruised purple, clouds like smudged thumbprints. No moon, no stars, just the road. I remember thinking how quiet it was, even for the hill country. No frogs, no crickets, no wind. Just my tires and the thrum of my old Dodge's engine. I saw the old church by accident. Didn't even know where I was. There was a sagging sign near the edge of the brush. Limestone cutoff. I passed it and thought nothing of it. A shortcut. That's all. Then, just like the story said, the lights went out. I mean completely. One moment I had a full spread of halogens lighting up the gravel and the trees in front of me. The next I was driving in black syrup. I tapped the brakes. Nothing. Pulled the high beams. Flipped every knob on the dash. Dead. The engine kept humming like nothing was wrong, but I couldn't see a goddamn thing. Even the cabin light wouldn't come on when I opened the glove box. I took my foot off the gas. Coasted. Windows down. It was warm, but not summer warm, something damp, like breath on the back of your neck. That's when I felt it. The pressure. Like something thick was pushing in from all sides. Not just darkness, but a presence in the dark. The way a crowded room feels when everyone's watching you. It wasn't just that I couldn't see, I could feel the dark, like it had weight, like it had form. I tried turning the wheel gently to see if the road was still beneath me, but the gravel crunched too smooth. No turns. No dips. Just a dead straight stretch of unlit earth that somehow kept going without ever feeling like progress. I don't know how long I rolled like that. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 20. But I started hearing it breathing, not mine, not the wind. This was labored, wet, rhythmic. It came from both sides of the truck at once, like two sets of lungs drawing air in tandem. In and out, close, too close. Like they were just outside the window. I hit the lock button, but the truck didn't respond. I rolled the windows up slow, grinding whines from aging motors, and that made it worse, because now I couldn't hear it clearly. Just muffled grunts behind glass. Shapes formed in my head, things stooped and crawling, pressing their flat faces against the doors, watching me coast. Then something touched the roof. A tap, then another. Then a scrape, slow and deliberate, like someone dragging nails across. Sheet metal. I kept both hands on the wheel, didn't move, didn't blink. Something told me that if I stopped, if I touched the brakes, it would get in. Not break in, be inside. Like it was already halfway there. I remember muttering prayers. Not full ones, just the shapes of them. Words I hadn't used since I was a kid. My mouth was dry, my fingers shook. And the road kept going. I should have reached the county junction in less than 10 minutes. I hadn't. No signs. No light pollution. No other cars. Then I saw the figure off to the right, just past a row of leaning cedar trunks. There was a man. Or something wearing the shape of one. Pale as ash, dressed in what looked like a preacher's coat. No face I could make out, but he had a hand up flat and stiff like a signal to stop. I didn't. I sped up. The engine sputtered, groaned. Dashboard flared red, then died again. The road shook beneath the tires. The whole truck began to rattle, like it was trying to throw me off, and then the lights came back on. Just like that. I was at the end of Limestone Cutoff, blinking against the sudden glare of the brights. I slammed the brakes. Nothing behind me but dust and black trees. No sign of the preacher. No scratches on the roof. No dents. I got out, checked every inch. Clean. I didn't talk about it for months. Then in January, I heard about 2 teens who vanished along that same road. Amber and Chase from Wimberley. She was driving a new RAV4. Texted her sister at 12:04 a.m. saying, "Almost home, just took the shortcut." That was the last anyone heard from her. Car was found the next day on the far end of Limestone Cutoff. Headlights busted. Doors flung open. No blood. No tire tracks. Just 2 faint prints in the gravel bare feet. Heading into the brush. Never found them. Since then, it's been worse. More stories. A deputy whose flashlight died right at the church ruins. A rancher who tried to cut through with floodlights mounted on his trailer. They blew out one by one like matches in wind. He swears something ran alongside his truck the whole way. Long arms, too many joints. Eyes that blink sideways. Some say the church was built on old bones, that the land was never blessed properly after the fire. Others say it was never a real church at all, just a cover for something older, darker. The kind of place that remembers. Every footstep, every whisper. Every blood-soaked Sunday where no one walked out. Me? I just know what I saw, what I felt. That thing in the dark, that awareness. It wasn't evil in the way people think. It was ancient, curious, and very, very hungry. If you ever drive Limestone Cutoff after midnight, don't stop. Don't look. Don't whisper. And whatever you do, don't turn around. The darkness isn't empty. It's waiting. And it remembers. Old Sparrow's Lane was the kind of road you could live 10 miles from your whole life and never hear about unless someone whispered it to you. There were no signs. Just a gravel turnoff near a dip in the hill between Wren Hollow and Cooper's. Pond. If you drove too fast, you missed it. If you drove too slow, You noticed the strange way the oaks leaned toward the road, like they were trying to see who was passing. Folks in nearby towns like Grayfield or Dun Creek didn't talk about it often, and when they did, they never said the name out loud. They'd just say, "That place up behind the hollow," and that was enough. The teenagers, of course, they loved it. They dared each other to go, to spend the night, to take video for their TikToks or YouTube ghost hunter junk. Most came back with shaky footage and dumb grins, but now and then, one didn't come back at all. And that's when people got real quiet again. It was sometime around early September when I first heard the rhyme. I was driving back from a busted plumbing job just outside Dun Creek. The guy had paid in cash and invited me to drink beer with him on his porch, which I did, and I guess I had one too many, because when I left around 11:30, I took the wrong turn at the base of the hill. The road was dirt and dark, the kind where your headlights catch more dust than forward path, and I realized pretty quick I wasn't where I was supposed to be. But before I could flip around, my radio cut out. Not a pop or static, just dead. The dash lights flickered, and then, over the hum of my tires crunching gravel, I heard it. Soft at first, a tune I hadn't heard since childhood. Something about rings and ashes and falling down. The kind of rhyme they made you sing in kindergarten without thinking twice. But it wasn't coming from my speakers. It was coming from above. I slowed the truck and leaned forward, peering through the windshield like that'd help. The trees on either side of the lane were thick, gnarled, and tall oaks mostly, but sick-looking, with long, spindly limbs that didn't belong. In Texas, their branches stretched overhead, tangling into a kind of broken canopy. That's where the singing was, in the trees. Up high, like a children's choir was hiding in the leaves. I rolled the window down and killed the engine. Silence. Then, voices, high and thin and slightly off-key, like an old record warping, just enough to feel wrong. Ring around the sparrow's head, ashes fall, the children dead. I felt my skin crawl. The words weren't right. That wasn't how it went. I was listening to some twisted version of it. And those weren't normal kid voices. Too uniform. Too rehearsed. Something in them was off. I wanted to leave, but my hand shook when I reached for the keys. Then I noticed something moving across the dirt in my rear view. Shapes. Small ones. Darting between trees but never touching the ground. I swear on my life they floated. Just above the earth, like fog with legs. I drove out of there so fast I cracked my axle on a bump near a cattle grate and didn't care. I didn't slow down. Until I saw the lights of Grayfield blinking on the horizon. I told my buddy Walt what I saw. He's the sheriff's brother and used to mess around that area when he was young. He got real quiet when I mentioned the rhyme. Told me he'd heard the same thing once, back in '87, when his cousin vanished after a dare. They found her bike. At the edge of Old Sparrow's Lane, still upright, still warm. No sign of her. The local paper wrote it off as a runaway. But Walt said his aunt never believed that. Neither did he. That got me digging. The local library in Grayfield has a back room with all the old record school registers, property maps, even some grainy microfiche from the early 1900s. I spent 2 full afternoons there before I found anything. A fire. April 9th, 1902. An elementary school. Sparrow's Mill School for rural children burned to the ground after a kerosene stove exploded in the basement. 23 children and 1 teacher perished. The article was short, said the fire department. Couldn't get up the hill in time. The photo was worse. Blurry black and white, showing nothing but charred beams and a crooked bell tower that had collapsed like a broken neck. A follow-up article from a week later mentioned that the door to the school had been chained shut from the outside. No arrests were made. No further investigation. Just a quiet burial of names and responsibility. There was one more thing. A woman. named Emmeline Crowley had written a letter to the editor, claiming she heard singing from the trees above the ruins 3 nights after the fire. She said it wasn't music, it was mockery, and that something evil had been born from the ashes. The paper didn't print her letter in full. They called her hysterical. A year later, she was committed to the Grayfield Sanitarium. She died there in 1907. No family claimed the body. I should have stopped there, but I didn't. I needed to see the place again, in the daylight. I figured whatever I heard was a trick of the booze and the hour. So I went back the following Sunday morning, just after sunrise. Brought a camera. Brought a flashlight too, even though it was bright out. The turnoff was still there. The lane narrower than I remembered. No tire tracks. Just dry dust and the occasional rabbit hole. The trees leaned even worse than before, their limbs gnarled and black-veined like something sick had taken root. Inside them, I parked about a half-mile in and walked the rest. Found the old stone steps of what used to be the school foundation. They were cracked and half sunk into the earth, but still visible. Part of a scorched brick wall remained, with a rusted length of chain still wrapped through what used to be the main door frame. The ground felt wrong. Spongy, like there was water just under the dirt, even though the season had been dry. I stood there for a while, trying to record the sight. That's when I heard a giggle, not from behind. From above, I looked up and saw small shapes shifting among the branches. Not birds, not squirrels. Pale, thin, watching me. Then came the voices again. The same rhyme. Different verse. One by one they climbed too high, burned their wings, and couldn't cry. I felt dizzy. My vision blurred like something was squeezing my eyes from inside my skull. The air grew thick and metallic, like breathing in pennies. I turned to run and found my boots sinking into the ground. Not mud, not quicksand. Just soft earth that hadn't been soft a minute ago. I wrenched free and stumbled back to my truck, hearing laughter all the while, little, shrill, cruel laughs that followed me until I was back behind the wheel. I peeled out of there with gravel kicking up behind me like shotgun pellets. When I got home, I checked my camera. Nothing but static. My flashlight? The bulb had shattered clean through without me dropping it. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw children without eyes or mouths, their faces like melted wax, swaying in the trees like wind chimes. 2 days later, Walt came to my place. Told me the sheriff's office had received a report. Another teen gone missing, same area. Left a note saying he wanted to see the singing kids. No trace since. His bike was found lying sideways at the start of Old Sparrow's Lane. Same place. As Walt's cousin, now I don't go near that road. I don't speak its name. But sometimes, when the wind's right and the night is clear, I hear the tune again, faint and drifting on the air like dandelion seeds, and I swear, I see shapes. In the treetops, swaying in rhythm, still singing. There's a road out near Dry Gap, not marked on newer maps. Not since the mid-90s. Pinto Ridge Road, they still call it, though most folks just refer to it as that Ridge Road with a nervous tone, like the words themselves could open something better left shut. It's not long, maybe 3 miles of blacktop clawing up the northern edge of a rocky incline the locals call Pinto Ridge. There's a gas station in town, Sully's Corner Mart, where the old-timers drink coffee on the front bench and tell stories about that road like they're warning you not to poke a rattlesnake with a stick. The thing is, the road starts off pretty normal. Narrow, sure. Curvy, yeah, but nothing out of the ordinary. No cliffs or fences or barricades. Just a lazy incline past a thicket of cedar trees and dry brush. The first curve tight, but nothing a decent driver couldn't handle. The second, one sharper and banked slightly to the left. A few folks say their tires slipped there in the rain. But it's the third curve, they say, that does something to you. Not just the road, but the air, the light, the sound. That's the one comes back from. They used to send crews up there when a car didn't return. Sheriff Hardy, back in 2003, took 2 deputies and a tow rig up Pinto Ridge after a Ford Bronco went missing belonged to a substitute teacher named Danya Spears. She was heading home from a late shift, sent a text to her husband from the gas station, and then nothing. Her phone last pinned off the ridge, about half a mile up. The crew went all the way to the third curve and back again. No car, no Danya, just the quiet and the wind and the unshakable feeling that something had seen them looking. Hardy didn't talk much after that. Started showing up to town council meetings looking like he hadn't slept. Grew real twitchy around dusk. Retired a year later, citing stress. Nobody argued. 3 cars vanished up there last year. 3. A couple from Lubbock, driving a Civic. A mechanic named Eli Ramos, whose flatbed was found idling just past the first turn. Door open, keys still swinging from the ignition. And a girl. From Oklahoma State, road tripping through Texas alone. Her mom said she had a GoPro running the whole time. The stream cut out right after she passed the second curve. It didn't cut to black, it just glitched and froze on a single frame. Her face, eyes wide. Mouth just starting to open like she was about to scream. People theorize. Fault lines, gas pockets. Some say there's a sinkhole just past the third turn, though how it never left evidence is beyond anyone. Others think there's something magnetic or radioactive or time-based. The road doesn't have guardrails. It doesn't have signage. It doesn't have cell service. And for whatever reason, dash cams never record past a certain point. They glitch. They cut off. Some stop recording altogether. Batteries drained flat despite being full just minutes earlier. I didn't believe any of it. Not until my brother went missing. Kenny. He was the reckless one between us. I always played it safe. He went skydiving. I filed taxes early. He moved to Austin. I stayed in Dry Gap to run Dad's hardware store. But he came home often enough, and each time he'd come back with stories, some funny, some dark, most fueled by beer and half-truths. That last time, though, he was different, quiet, unsettled. He asked me about the road, if I'd ever driven it. I said no. He said good, and then he said don't. That night he took my truck, said he needed air. I figured he'd just go down to the lake or the tracks. But the next morning, my truck was found parked neatly on the gravel shoulder just before the first curve. Driver's door open. Kenny's phone still on the seat, wallet untouched in the console. And no Kenny died. I went up myself 2 days later. I took a backup battery, a satellite GPS unit, and a rented Jeep with off-road tires and brand new brakes. Told no one I was going. I started the recording before the ridge, narrated everything like I was doing a documentary. The first curve was tighter than I expected. The road narrowed to barely a lane and a half, and cedars hugged the shoulders like spectators at a funeral. The second curve banked hard to the left. The sun filtered through the trees in weird patterns, like shadows were moving in reverse, like light was bending wrong. Then I approached the third curve. It doesn't look like much. Just a gentle right turn around an outcrop of stone. No sharp drop, no incline. Just more road disappearing behind a line of brush. But the moment my tires crossed a certain point, the air changed. Everything went silent. I mean completely. The engine was running, but I couldn't hear it. My breathing was gone. The rattle of the console, the tick of the turn signal, nothing. It was like someone pressed mute on the world. And the sky, God help me. The sky wasn't the sky anymore. It wasn't night. It wasn't day. It was something in between, like the moment in a dream when you realize it's not real. but you can't wake up. The road after the third curve didn't match the map. It didn't loop back down toward the highway. It kept climbing. I passed. Things I don't have words for. Trees that looked like they were folded in on themselves. Rocks with symbols etched deep into them, symbols I didn't recognize, but they made my head throb just to look at them. The air smelled like ozone and old wood, like an attic you didn't know was there. The road kept going. I should have turned around, but there was no place to. No shoulder, no brakes. The path just pulled forward like it wanted me to keep going. And I did. I saw a car eventually. The Civic, just like the report said. Hood popped, no one inside. It was covered in a thin layer of dust, but the headlights were still warm when I touched them. Another quarter-mile up, I saw the mechanic's flatbed. The tires were sunken a bit, like it had been there weeks. But the engine block was warm too, I called out. My voice didn't echo. It didn't even sound like it left my throat. Then I saw movement. Not ahead, but to the side. In the trees, something was there. It wasn't human. Too tall. Wrong posture. Its limbs bent strange, like elbows on the wrong side. It watched me, head cocked. Then it stepped back and disappeared into the brush, like it sank into the trees themselves. I kept driving. I found Kenny's hoodie hanging from a branch about a mile up. Then his boots, neatly placed beside each other in the middle of the road. I stopped the Jeep, called his name. That's when I heard it. Not his voice, but mine. Repeating my own words back at me seconds after I said them. Not an echo. A mimic. I shouted again. The forest whispered it back. Warped, delayed, stretched like something pulling skin off bone. I turned the Jeep around. It took effort, like the tires didn't want to obey. The wheel resisted like it was stuck in thick mud, though the road was dry. When I finally got it facing downhill, the sky flickered, like a light bulb about to go out. Driving back, I passed nothing. No cars, no signs, no boots, no hoodie. Even the curve itself seemed further away than before, like the road had stretched. Behind me, when I finally reached the third curve again, I gunned it. I don't remember crossing it. I just remember the sound coming back all at once, birds, engine, my own ragged breathing. I almost drove off the ridge. I got back to town shaking. Watched the footage. It was gone. The drive up to the third curve was fine. The moment one. Crossed it static, then black. 22 minutes of nothing. The GPS? Fried. The satellite unit? Blinking red. I told the sheriff. He just nodded like he'd heard it before. Said the state tried to close the road in 2019, but it just didn't stay closed. Every time they blocked it off, someone moved the barricades. No one ever saw who. They don't send search crews anymore. They mark the missing and move on. Pinto Ridge Road is still there. And no one's returned from the third curve. Not really. Because even I didn't come back the same. I first heard about the booth from a kid named Lucas who worked nights at the Shell-Off Route 91, just a few miles east of Shadow Mill Road. He was a jumpy type, the kind who watched horror movies on his phone during slow shifts and kept his dad's old revolver under the counter, even though the neighborhood hadn't seen a stick-up in 20 years. That night, though, he looked different, pale, sweating even though the AC was blowing hard, fingers twitching as he rang up my gas. And pack of Camels. You ever take the back road past the old mill? He asked me, eyes not leaving the glass doors of the station. The one they shut down after the workers started going missing? I nodded. Everyone in town knew about Shadow Mill. It had been abandoned. Since the early 90s, boarded up with signs warning about asbestos and structural instability. But every so often, a dare would make its rounds and the high school sneak inside, snap a photo, make it out by midnight. Stupid stuff. There's a booth there now, Lucas said. Like a toll booth, only it wasn't there yesterday. He tried to laugh, but it came out dry and shaky. I didn't think much of it until I drove that way 2 nights later, heading to Mason Creek to drop off some old equipment from the bait shop. It was just past 9 p.m. The sky had turned that purplish-black shade that hangs heavy over East Texas in the summer, and the cicadas were humming so loud it sounded like static. I just passed the old brick chimney of Shadow Mill, nothing left of the building but that and a pile of rotted planks, when my headlights hit something wooden just ahead. I slowed down. It was a toll booth, small, weathered, maybe 6 feet tall, with flaking paint and a roof covered in what looked like moss. No window, no lights, no wires, just a black slot in the center and a nailed-on sign that read, "Pay what you owed." There wasn't another soul on the road. No cars behind me. No security cameras. Just that booth. I rolled down my window, leaned halfway out, trying to get a look inside. But the booth was empty, no person, no machine. Just the deep black of the slot, like a mail chute or something older. I should have kept driving. But instead, I reached into my glove box and pulled out a 5. Maybe I thought it was a prank. Maybe I was just curious. I slipped the bill into the slot. It vanished like the hole had sucked it in. Then a soft click came from somewhere inside the booth, like a gear turning. The road ahead looked the same, and I figured that was it. Weird? Sure, but maybe some artist set it up for some stupid roadside project. I didn't think about it again until the next day, when my neighbor Ginny came over with trembling hands and dark circles under her eyes. She'd been crying. There was something at my door last night, she said. I asked her what she meant, and she told me, voice low, like she was confessing something, that she'd driven past the mill the night before, seen the booth, ignored it, thought it was a Halloween prop or something. And then, at 2:14 a.m., I heard footsteps on the porch. Not walking, pacing, back and forth, back and forth. I looked through the peephole and she stopped, just shook her head. I don't know what. It was tall, like too tall, and it didn't move right. Its arms were too long. It never knocked, just paced. For hours. She said she woke up at dawn on her couch, fully dressed, with the TV on static and all her clocks reset to 12 o'clock. I didn't believe her, not completely. Not until 3 more people told me the same thing. Always the same pattern. Saw the booth. Ignored it. Woke up somewhere strange behind locked doors, in the wrong clothes, sometimes even in the wrong town. And always, something was at their door that night. I kept thinking about that sign. Pay what you owe, not pay the toll. Not fee required. No dollar amount, just what you owe. That's when things started getting weirder. A week later, Hank Davidson, who used to coach varsity football back in the day, was found hanging from the 2nd floor of the VFW hall. No suicide note. But the janitor who found him said the front door had been scratched open. Scratched. Not forced. Not broken. And on the floor, near Hank's boots, was a burned slip of paper. You owed too much was all it said. Then folks in town started avoiding the whole stretch of road. Google Maps rerouted around it. One of the local deputies, Carla Bray, said every time she drove that way, her radio would go out. The static wasn't normal. She said it sounded like whispering. She never stayed long enough to make out the words. Eventually, the county blocked off Shadow Mill Road altogether. Barricades. Reflectors. A posted notice claiming erosion, but even with the road shut, the stories didn't stop. An EMT named Ronnie woke up in the ambulance bay after pulling an overnight shift, with bloody handprints on the back doors of his rig and every mirror inside cracked. He didn't remember how he got there. He'd taken a shortcut home. The route? Shadow Mill. A teacher from the middle school found a wax seal on her doormat one morning, deep red, melted into the concrete. Her dog wouldn't stop barking until she burned it. She confessed to me later that she'd lied in court a few years back. She hadn't meant to. She just wanted custody. By the time fall came around, nobody even talked about the booth anymore. It became like a collective secret. You didn't go near the road. If someone brought it up, people just changed the subject. But the thing is, I did pay that $5 bill, and yet something came to my door last week. It started as a knock. Just after 3 a.m., 3 slow, heavy knocks. No car in the drive. No footsteps in the gravel. When I looked through the peephole, I saw nothing at first. Then, movement. Like someone was leaning forward into the frame from the side. Slowly. Too slowly. I locked every bolt I had, grabbed my shotgun, and waited. Until sunrise. Nothing happened. But I found a note the next morning, taped to the inside of my bedroom window. Inside, it was scrawled in pencil. Childlike handwriting. Barely legible. You paid too little, we remember. That's when I realized it isn't about money. It's about debt. Not the kind you track on paper. Not something a credit score can measure. Shadow Mill Road doesn't care how much you make or what you think you're worth. It just waits. And when the sun goes down and the booth creaks open again, it tallies your soul like a ledger, page after page. And God help you if the balance comes up short. They say Widow's Turnpike wasn't always a highway. Long before the stretch of blacktop cut through the woods just east of Temple, it was a wagon path carved by settlers who disappeared one by one without a trace. Local legend says a woman in black used to walk that same route, her face veiled, hands empty, waiting for her husband to return from the war. When he didn't, she walked herself into the woods one night and never came back out. That's how the name stuck. Widow's Turnpike, the road you don't stop on, not even for a flat tire, not even if your kid's screaming in the backseat, not even if something knocks from the damn trunk. I didn't believe in that kind of talk. I'd driven every back road in Central Texas. My job as a courier for a private law firm in Austin had me running boxes of documents to courthouses in rural towns no one could pronounce and fewer had ever heard of. My route that week took me from Belton to a courthouse in Marquez, and GPs, despite me telling it not to, dragged me off I-35 and onto that cracked 2-lane stretch of Widow's Turnpike. It looked like any other road at first. Pecan trees on both sides, fence posts leaning from years of wind and neglect. I passed a rusted billboard for Dr. Pepper that looked like it hadn't been touched since the 60s. The sky had turned a kind of overcast brown, the way it gets right before a Texas thunderstorm rolls through. I was doing 60 and figured I'd be through the stretch in 10 minutes. But then my dash lights flickered and the engine stuttered. Like it had swallowed something sharp. I tapped the gas. Nothing. I coasted. Cursed. Tapped the hazard button. Dead. No lights. No sound. I pulled to the shoulder just past a concrete marker that read 13 mile marker 13, though it looked freshly poured. When I came to a stop, that's when I heard it knock. Knock, 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 rhythmic, slow, coming from the back of the car. I sat there for a minute, still gripping the steering wheel. It was probably something shifting in the trunk, I told myself. A binder falling. Maybe the spare tire jostling. But it didn't sound like that. It sounded deliberate, like knuckles on metal. Like someone knocking to be let out. Knock, knock, knock. Knock. I turned around, staring toward the rear of the SUV. I'd driven this vehicle for 5 years. It had never made a sound like that before. I opened the glove box and grabbed the flashlight I kept for emergencies. It worked, but the beam was weak, like the batteries were draining in real time. I stepped out into the stale, heavy air and walked toward the back of the car. Everything around me was quiet. Too quiet. No wind. No insects. Even the trees felt still. As if they were listening, I stood in front of the trunk and placed my hand on it. It knocked again. I yanked my hand back. 3 knocks, all evenly spaced. Coming from inside, I backed up a step, looked around. The highway was empty. No cars coming either direction. No farmhouses. No sign of civilization. I felt the skin on my arms tighten like the hair was trying to crawl off. The air felt wet and full of pressure, like I was underwater. And then the knocking stopped. I stood there for another minute. Then 2, still nothing. I told myself I had to check it. Just to be sure. So I reached for the latch and popped the trunk. It opened with a hiss. Nothing inside. Just the box of legal documents, the spare tire, jumper cables. No raccoon. No prankster. No drifter hiding under the flap. But the trunk floor had something new: mud. Fresh, dark mud smeared in long ovals. Like someone had pressed their feet into the lining and then slid back toward the latch. The oddest part was how small the prints were. Child-sized, barefoot, and soaked. That's when I heard something move behind me. A breath, low and wrong. Spun with the flashlight and scanned the tree line. Still nothing. But I was sure, absolutely sure, I'd felt it. Like something was crouched just past the reach of the beam, watching me. And not just watching, smiling. I slammed the trunk shut and ran back to the driver's seat. Tried the ignition. Still. Dead. Not even a click. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Not even a bar. And the battery icon flickered like it was being drained. Same as the flashlight. And then I heard it again. This time from inside the car. Knock. Knock, knock. Knock. But not from the trunk. From the inside of the back seat. I turned slowly, like I didn't want to see what I already knew I would. Nothing was there, but the back seat was wet. Dark streaks trailed across the leather, muddy footprints leading up the middle. They stopped right behind the driver's seat. I looked down. Mud. On. The floor mat. Fresh. And then something spoke. It wasn't a voice in the usual sense. It wasn't even sound, exactly. It was like pressure in my skull, forming words I didn't want to hear. Pay the toll. I lunged for the door handle, threw it open, and stumbled into the middle of the road. I turned in every direction, waving. The flashlight like a maniac. Still no cars. Still no sign of life. And then the flashlight cut out completely. No flicker, no fade, just gone. The beam vanished like a switch. Had been flipped. That's when the rain started, but it didn't come from the sky. It came up. Watched in horror as tiny droplets of black water bubbled from the pavement itself, rising like sweat through skin. The asphalt shimmered, rippling with liquid that smelled like rot and copper. I stepped back, shoes sloshing through the road as if it had turned into a shallow lake. And then I saw them. Figures. Dozens of them. Silhouettes lining the woods, some tall, some hunched, some crawling on all fours, all just watching. None moving. Until one did. It stepped forward out of the trees. A woman draped in what looked like an old morning dress. Black lace veil, pale hands, bare feet covered in mud. She raised one hand and pointed directly at my car. The others followed, all pointing. All at once, I turned, sprinted to the car, slipped once, caught myself, and jumped in. I didn't care if it started. I didn't care if I had to sit there and die. I just wanted to be surrounded by metal. But the engine roared to life the second I turned the key. Every dash light lit up in red. The car lurched forward before I even touched the gas, wheels spinning over the wet blacktop. I didn't look. Back, I drove 10 miles, then 20. The sky cleared by the time I hit the county line. and my cell signal returned like nothing had happened. I pulled into a diner just past Marquez, parked under a bright orange streetlight, and sat there shaking, listening to the engine. Idle. I opened the trunk again. The prints were gone. So was the mud. Everything was dry. I've avoided Widow's Turnpike since then. I take the long way every time. Adds 30 minutes to the drive, but I don't care. I never want to see mile marker 13 again. A week later, one of the interns at the firm borrowed my SUV. Just a quick run to Lampasas and back. She stalled. On the same stretch, same marker. I hadn't told her the story. She came back hours late, white as paper. Wouldn't talk about it. But that night, after she parked and went inside, I checked the trunk again. One perfect footprint, small wet, facing out. They say the road used to circle the entire lake, back when Caddo still drew campers and fishermen in the summer and duck hunters in the winter. Now it's just called Old Caddo Loop, and it barely holds together, just a narrow, cracking ring of asphalt swallowed at intervals by brush, moss, and the slow reclaiming fingers of East Texas pines. You don't drive it by accident. Hell, most folks in Oilfield or Dead Lake don't drive it at all anymore unless they're drunk, dared, or desperate. I took it because I was all three. My wife had just walked out second time in 4 years, and she took the dogs with her this time. I was a few beers deep into a bad mood and a worse playlist, and I just wanted to get gone. Not out of town exactly, but far enough that nobody would call, and I wouldn't be tempted to call back. The Caddo Loop was always quiet. No patrol cars, no service. Just woods, the stink of still water, and the occasional old trailer that looked half abandoned even when lights flickered inside. I should have turned around when I saw the first one. It stood in the ditch maybe 30 yards up, barely lit by my high beams. A buck, big, still, just standing there broadside, with its head turned toward the road like it had been waiting for something. Not startled, not grazing, just watching. The fur on the back of my neck prickled before I even passed it. I slowed, rolled by. It didn't flinch, didn't blink. Eyes just shining like yellow glass in the beams, staring right through my windshield like it could see me. Then there was another, not 20 feet beyond the first. Same posture, same size, except this one faced me head on. Front legs locked, head slightly tilted, antlers wider. Its breath plumed in the cold air, like smoke from a pipe, then a third. I'd only driven a quarter mile. They didn't move. I turned the radio off. No good reason. Just felt wrong to have noise with them like that on both sides. Like I was being watched in church, or a courtroom, or a morgue. I drove slower, kept seeing them. One here, two there. Always in the brush just off the shoulder, always facing the road. Still as statues. When I hit the first curve near the East Inlet Bridge, I braked almost to a crawl. Not from fear, not yet, just caution. The loop narrows there. One lane, really. And the guardrails are long gone rusted. Out, some washed into the water, some taken for scrap. The lake laps close to the edge. As I crept through that bend, I saw a small cluster on the right. 5 or 6, all standing together like they'd convened there. Not eating. Not lying in the grass. Just standing side by side, eyes all catching. My headlights at once. And that's when I noticed it. None of them blinked. I don't mean that figuratively. I mean not one single deer blinked. The eyes stayed open, wide, unbreaking. The light glared in them and nothing changed. No flinch, no flutter. Just that flat yellow shine. I counted seconds. 10, 15. They stayed the same. Then, all at once, they blinked in unison, every one of them. At the exact same moment, and when I blinked too, just reflex nerves, they were gone. No sound, No rustling. Nothing in my rear view. Just empty roadside grass. I stopped the truck, sat there. Heart thudding. I knew animals didn't do that. Not together. Not like that. I leaned forward and scanned the tree line, half expecting to see them standing farther back now. Nothing. Just that sick smell of swamp and pine. Needles and mud. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the beer. Maybe not enough sleep. Maybe deer do weird things when nobody's around to watch them. I backed off the brake, rolled on. The road twisted tighter as I got closer to the northern bend, the place where most of the loop had eroded after the old paper mill dammed off part of the feeder creek. Hardly anyone came this far. Locals said the road was cursed. I always thought that was bullshit, but then I hit the brakes. Dead in the center of the road. Ahead, maybe 20 yards, stood another buck. This one bigger than the rest. Rack wide as my hood. Coat darker, almost black, with wet-looking patches around the neck. It wasn't alone. Behind it, more. A line of deer. Silent. Still. All standing across the road, shoulder to shoulder like a wall. Eyes glowing. All staring. I couldn't count how many. At least a dozen, maybe more. Some still stepping up from the trees behind, but in no hurry. Like they'd rehearsed it. I turned on my brights. Bad move. The deer didn't flinch. But something changed. Their heads tilted, slightly, all at once, then tilted back, then straightened. All in rhythm. It looked like nodding. Or worse, acknowledgement. I threw the truck in reverse. Sped backward until I felt my rear tires bounce into a shallow rut. Then I spun the wheel, backed into the grass, and cut off toward a shoulder path that used to connect to the lake access. Ramp. But my tires stuck. The back dipped. Mud. I punched the gas, got nothing but spin. The headlights caught trees. More deer. On both sides now. Lining the woods. Watching. I killed the engine. Just for a second. Sat there with my breath fogging. The inside of the windshield. The silence felt full. Not peaceful, crowded. Like holding your breath in a room where something else is breathing. Then something tapped the glass. Just once. Driver's side window. I whipped around, but nothing was there. No prints. No smudges. But then the tapping started again, faint now. On the hood, I turned the key. Engine wheezed once, then caught. I didn't wait for it to idle. Slammed it in gear, rocked the truck back and forth, tires squealing through mud until I finally lurched free. I didn't go back to the loop. I cut through the shoulder trail and forced my way through a shallow drainage path until I hit the gravel access road near the fishing camp. I didn't look in the mirrors. I didn't want to die by the time I got home. I was shaking. Left the truck running in the driveway. Stumbled inside. Threw up in the sink. Next morning, I went out to check the damage. I expected scratches, mud, maybe. Busted suspension from the rough exit. Instead, I found something worse. Two long curved gouges in the grill. And an antler. Snapped clean at the base, jammed deep into the radiator like a thrown spear. No blood. No fur. Just the antler. And embedded in the point a smear of something dark, almost oily, that smelled like rot. I had it tested. Lab tech. Said it wasn't deer tissue. Said it wasn't anything they could match. I sold the truck that week. 6 months later, another driver crashed near the North Bend. They found his sedan still running. No sign of struggle, no blood. But the hood was stove in like something huge had slammed it, and in the engine block they found 4 antlers. All jammed in at perfect angles, like fingers digging in. They say he'd called his sister before he left. Told her he'd seen a wall of deer the night before. Said they didn't move. Just stared. Said he felt like they weren't watching. Traffic. Said they were waiting for someone. She said he sounded scared. Real scared. Then the call. Drop. No signal out there. Not on Old Caddo Loop. Not anymore. They always told her Hollow Ranch Trail was a dead road, dead in the way that made folks from Junction or Menard drop their voices and change the subject. The kind of road you only took when you missed a turn or were following GPS too blindly. To listen to your gut. And maybe that's what happened to Christy Landers that Friday night in October. She was just trying to shave 10 minutes off the drive to Campwood after the gas station on 41 told her the main highway was blocked by a wreck near Rock Springs. Her phone rerouted her down a road she didn't remember seeing on the map before. Hollow Ranch Trail. Dirt road. Isolated. Unlit. But she figured it was Texas. There were 1,000 little paths that led to bigger ones. Ranchers used them. Hunters. Old-timers. She thought she'd be fine. She should have turned around. The minute her tires dipped out, it was subtle at first, like a pothole covered with dry weeds. A small sag, almost like a breath exhaling under the wheels of her rented Chevy Traverse. She slowed, then braked. Looked back through the rear view. Nothing. The road behind her was flat as far as her high beams reached. The dirt pale and powdery, not muddy or soft, but it felt soft. Not like dirt or even wet clay, soft like something living. Something tender. She muttered something under her breath and tapped the steering wheel. She was alone. It was past 10. The radio had gone to static about a mile back, and she hadn't had cell service since the last cattle gate. The only sound was her engine ticking low and the cicadas buzzing like they were in heat. She started driving again, slower now, scanning the road with her brights. Less than a minute later, the tires dipped again. Both of them this time, front first. Then the back. Like she'd rolled over something soft and thick and slightly raised, then down again. Like going over a pillow shoved into the dirt. Then came the fingers. It started as a scrape. No, not even that. A sensation. Something dragging lightly beneath the vehicle. Not metal on metal, not a branch, not even gravel kicking up. Dragging. Like fingertips pressed along the undercarriage, pulling across it with deliberate slowness. She leaned forward, turned down the AC, and rolled down her window halfway. Nothing but still air and the chorus of night insects. She thought maybe it was an animal, a raccoon or feral dog that ducked under the vehicle. But that dragging, it was too even, too slow. Like someone lying beneath her, face up, tracing their hands along the belly of the car. Christy pulled over, or she tried to, but the dirt to her right had gone sludgy somehow, soft as pudding. As she turned the wheel, the front tires sank down. An inch or two like the trail had become a sponge. She stopped cold, got out, shined her phone flashlight under the car. Nothing there. She crouched, brushed the edge of the tire. The dirt looked dry, but when she pressed her palm to it, it gave like damp skin. She yanked her hand back fast, wiped it on her jeans, and got back in the car. She didn't look back a second time. She drove on, headlights catching nothing but the long, curling limbs of mesquite and live oak overhanging the trail like they were bending low to watch her. Every few minutes the car would dip again, and each time it did, she swore it got deeper. Not just a soft sag in the road, but a lurch like something was giving way under her. Like she was running over. No, she wasn't going to think like that. That's when she saw the footprints, just a few at first. Bare, human, clear in the dust, but facing the wrong way. They didn't follow the road, they were planted across it, like someone had been standing directly in her path. She slowed again, heart knocking in her chest, and rolled down the window further. She heard breathing. Not hers. She killed the engine. The breathing kept going. It was low and wet, like someone was struggling to inhale through a throat full of fluid. It came from the trees just to the left of the trail, deep in the brush. And just when she reached for the ignition to restart the engine and gun it down the road, she felt the dip again. Only this time it wasn't gradual. It was sudden, violent. The entire car rocked hard as though it had sunk into a trench or had been yanked into one dot, and then came the knock dot from under the floorboards. Not loud, just deliberate. Like knuckles on wood dot knock. Knock, she screamed, started the car. Jammed it into drive. She didn't stop again. The road narrowed. Branches slapped the sides of the SUV. Her GPS was dead. No signal. No reroute. The miles stretched. There were more dips now. Too many. One every 20 feet. Then every 10. Some so deep the nose of the car hit the edge and scraped. She could feel the resistance now, like the earth didn't want to let go of the tires. Like it. Knew she was trying to leave, and then she saw it. A shape in the road ahead. Rising up from the next dip dot, it looked like a hand. Not lying on the road, but coming out of it. Wrist deep, palm up, pale, still. She slammed the brakes, skidded sideways. Swerved hard to avoid it, but the moment she passed over the next dip, the entire vehicle jolted up and then down so fast and so hard the bumper scraped in something. Cracked beneath her. She didn't look back, didn't need to, because now she could feel them. The hands. Under her, reaching, pressing, fingers splayed, and digging, dragging across the undercarriage again and again, like they were trying to find a seam to pull through. One of them struck the exhaust pipe and stayed there. Hooked out, she drove faster. No more curves, no more turns, just speed. She didn't care if the car took damage. She just wanted off Hollow Ranch Trail. But the dips kept coming. Now they weren't. Even subtle. The whole vehicle would plunge like it had hit quicksand, then burst free with a slurp and a shake. The ground beneath her wasn't ground anymore. It pulsed. It rolled. Like muscle. Like breath. That's when she saw the sign. A wooden post nailed crooked into a tree stump. Hollow Ranch, no trespassing family, O&L. Why she tore past it. Didn't even read the bottom line. But in her rear view, it shifted in the glow of her taillights. The letters moved, rearranged, became something else. The road widened, the dip stopped, but the car was still dragging. Something long and wet-scraped. Under the floorboards. She didn't slow until she hit pavement again, County Road 333, according to the old green sign just ahead. She drove 5 miles further before pulling into the next gas station. Pale and shaking, hands trembling so hard she could barely hold her phone when the signal returned. The attendant stared at her when she stumbled in. She must have looked like hell. She asked for the bathroom, then came back and told him what road she'd taken. He looked at her for a long time, then stepped back from the counter. Hollow Ranch Trail? He asked. Off 41? She nodded. He just shook his head. They sealed that off 3 years ago. Landslide buried the whole trail. Ain't been drivable since. Even if you could get a car down it, you'd have to be real lost or real stupid. I saw the sign, she said. It was open. There were dips in the road, deep ones. Something's down there. The man didn't blink. You're not the first to come in saying that. He walked around the counter and motioned for her to follow him outside. They walked to the side of the building where a rusted old Ford was parked, its tires half flat and weeds growing around the base. He pointed at the undercarriage. Christy leaned. Down there were scratches. Deep ones. Parallel. Like claw marks. And in the middle of the front bumper, something was wedged tight. She crouched closer. Reached for a dot. It was a finger. Small gray. Bent. And it twitched. It started like most things do out on Cottonwood Trace, with silence, wide sky, and a road so narrow you could hear the gravel whisper under your tires. Locals out in that part of Caldwell County always said Cottonwood Trace wasn't much more than a forgotten farm lane twisted through dry fields and decaying pecan groves. They weren't wrong. It's the kind of road you don't find on a map unless you're really looking, and even then, you gotta squint. But the older folks especially, the ones who'd stayed behind after the dairy co-ops shut down, had another name for it. They called it Widow's Mile. Said there was something not right about the stretch between the old Jenkins silo and the boarded-up Baptist church. Something you felt in your chest more than your head. The first time I saw her, I was headed back from San Marcos late. I'd been drinking a little, not enough to be over the line, but enough that I didn't want to take the highway with the state troopers always posted near the way station. I figured Cottonwood Trace would shave off a few miles on my way home to Lulling. The moon was barely out, more of a smear behind the clouds than anything useful, and I remember thinking the night felt too quiet, like someone had sucked all the bell. Insects and frogs out of the air. My truck rumbled along, slow, high beams stretching out into the dark like spears of milk. That's when I saw her just past the rusted cattle guard, walking dead center in the lane like she didn't care if someone was coming or not. She was barefoot, maybe 40 feet ahead, and dressed like she'd stepped out of a 1960s church bulletin. A powder blue Sunday dress with lace at the hem and sleeves that hung just past the elbow. She had long, dark hair, straight, neat, not like a transient or someone high off their ass, no twitching or stumbling, just walking, deliberate and slow. Like she knew exactly where she was going. I honked. She didn't flinch. I rolled down my window and shouted, "Hey, you need help?" Nothing. No head turn, no hand wave, no stumble. She just kept walking like I wasn't there. So I eased up behind her, maybe 10 feet off her back bumper, and tapped the horn again. That's when she turned. It wasn't quick, and it wasn't jerky or weird. Just a slow pivot, like she was on a lazy Susan. Her feet didn't move. She just turned, and I saw her face in full. No eyes, not empty sockets, not blood or bone or horror movie gore. Just smooth, pale skin where her eyes should be. Like someone had laid porcelain over her face and forgotten to sculpt the eyes. Her nose and mouth were too fine, actually. Like a doll's. Perfect. Tiny. And then she smiled. Not big. Not crazy, but slow and wide. Like someone warming up to a joke only she understood. I don't remember shifting into reverse, but I do remember the gravel spitting under my tires as I backed away. That smile never changed. She didn't chase, didn't twitch. Just watched or didn't watch with that eyeless face until I disappeared around the bend and nearly backed into a cedar tree. I didn't tell anyone. Not at first. Partly because it felt like a hallucination. Partly because I didn't want the old-timers saying, "I told you so," and mostly because I didn't want to say her out loud. Saying it felt like inviting her back in, but over the next few weeks I couldn't stop thinking about her. I started avoiding Cottonwood Trace altogether, even in daylight. And that's when I started hearing the stories again at the gas station, on the loading dock at the feed store, in whispers at the crosshatch where the beer's always flat but the gossip's always fresh. She don't blink. My cousin. Saw her 2 years ago. Still don't drive at night. They say her husband beat her blind and left her to die in the woods. Preacher's girl, some say, took her own eyes with a spoon. That last one made me sick. But the stories didn't stop. They got worse. I ran into Marshall Denton one morning while fueling up. Denton's in his 60s, spent 20 years with the sheriff's department before he took to fixing fences and living out on the edge of town with his pack of blue heelers. He's not the kind to exaggerate. So when he said, "Saw her again," last night, I put my coffee down and listened. She was standing in my driveway, he said, not blinking. I didn't drive past her, didn't go looking. I was on my own land. 10 miles from Cottonwood Trace. She was just there. I stepped outside and there she was. Barefoot, blue dress. And she smiled. He pulled up his sleeve. Long, thin scratches. ran from his wrist to his elbow. "I didn't touch her," he said. "Didn't get close, but I heard this buzzing in my ears, like static from a dead channel. And then I was back inside and these were already there. That's when I started looking. Not for her, but for answers. I pulled records from the county archive, which ain't much more than a storage closet. In the courthouse basement, I found 3 unsolved deaths within a mile of Cottonwood, traced between 1958 and 1973. All were listed as natural causes or undetermined. All men, all with their cars found parked, doors open, keys in the ignition. 2 of them had strange notes scrawled on paper that wasn't theirs. Notes that didn't make sense. She won't stop smiling. The eyes are where the soul hides. She showed me what I am. I scanned one of those notes, the last one, and carried it with me for weeks like it might help if I ever saw her again. And I did. A month later, it was late again. Always is. I wasn't drunk this time, wasn't tired either. I'd deliberately taken Cottonwood Trace with a GoPro clipped to my dash, voice recorder running in the seat beside me. I had every intention of documenting what I saw or didn't. She was there before the curve. Same dress, same steps, same smooth skin. Only this time, she didn't wait for me to stop. She turned when I was still 30 yards out, and her smile was wider than before. Too wide. Like the skin around her cheeks had learned to stretch. Her hair hung like curtain ropes, damp and swaying slightly, though there was no wind. I slowed, stupidly, and she raised one hand, not waving, just lifting. Palm out like she was stopping traffic. I stopped. I don't know why. Maybe it was her hand. Maybe it was the static Denton was right. It buzzes in your skull like bees made of electricity. The lights on my truck dimmed. The air turned cold. And my breath began to fog the inside of the glass like it was January, not June. She moved. 1 step. Then 2. Then she was beside the driver's window, just standing there. The smile was gone. She leaned down, and I swear on my mother's grave, I felt her breath on my neck, though the window never rolled down. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there, her face inches from mine. I couldn't look away. The skin where her eyes should have been seen to ripple, like something underneath was moving, pushing to get out. I must have screamed. Or maybe I passed out. All I know is when I came to, I was parked behind the Dollar General in Lockhart, engine still running, hazard lights blinking. No sign of her. But the passenger seat was wet, not just damp-soaked. And the water smelled like stagnant pond. I haven't driven that road since. But now people say they've seen her in other places. The oil field behind Gonzales. The bend near Prairie Lee. Someone swore they saw her walking along I-10, just past the lulling exit, between trucks, smiling at nothing. She's moving. And every time someone sees her, they get closer to that grin. They say she shows up outside your window first, then your dreams. Then she starts whispering, though no one can ever repeat what she says. But I know one thing. She's not just a ghost. She's something older, something hungry, and she remembers everyone who's ever seen her. It starts the way most things do in these parts, quietly, like nothing's wrong at all. Just a gravel path behind a chain-link fence curling with rust, where the Texas heat makes the air ripple like water. New Hope Cemetery sits on the edge of Franklin County, tucked between a shuttered gas station and a dilapidated bait shop. It's not marked on most tourist maps, and even the locals say they don't remember when it last held a funeral. The headstones are old, most of them crooked. Names fading or already gone, dates worn to the point of nonsense. Some say it stopped being used sometime in the late 70s. Others think it never should have been used in the first place. There's a small gravel trail that runs behind the cemetery, not much wider than a deer run. No signs, no street marker. You wouldn't even notice it if you weren't already parked, already staring through the fence with that strange itch in the back of your neck, like someone's watching from behind the moss-covered stones. That's how I saw it, late last October, when I was driving back from Paris, Texas. I'd stopped to piss and stretch my legs, and there it was, this thin gray road tucked into the trees, leading off like a beckoning finger. I pulled my phone to check the map, just curiosity, but GPS froze. No movement. No signal bars. The little blue dot that usually tracks where I'm at had disappeared. Like it never knew I existed. I should have turned around. I know that now. But there was something about the way the trees leaned over the path, not like they were hiding it, but like they were letting me see it, just this once. I told myself I'd walk just a little ways in, get some fresh air, maybe find a decent patch of ground to sit and finish my sandwich before getting back on the road. The first thing I noticed, once I stepped past the tree line, was the silence. No birds, no bugs, not even the wind. Just my own feet crunching gravel. And even that seemed muffled. The second thing was the smell, earthy, damp, and sharp, like overturned soil and wet stone. Not fresh, not rotting, just old. The gravel underfoot was strange too. Soft in places, like it had give. I bent down at one point and touched it. It wasn't quite dirt. More like a thick powder mixed with crushed stone. It left a residue on my fingertips that I couldn't shake even after wiping them on my jeans. The trees thickened fast, turning the path into a tunnel. After maybe 5 minutes of walking, I realized I couldn't see the cemetery anymore, couldn't hear the road, couldn't hear anything at all, except for the sound that came next my name. At first, I thought I imagined it. Just a rustle in the branches or the trick of wind that wasn't there. But it came again clearer, not shouted, whispered, low, and close, like someone was crouched behind one of the trees, just out of sight. Daniel. I stopped dead. Looked left, right, up, nothing. I even called out, "Who's there?" But my voice came out strange, like it didn't belong to me. Flat, tinny, like it had been sucked into something deeper. I backed up a step and felt something shift under my boot. Not gravel. Not soil. It was a stone marker. It hadn't been there before. I swear it hadn't. I bent down and wiped the surface. There was a name carved shallow into the rock, one letter at a time, like it had been etched with fingernails. It was my name. My full name, middle initial and everything. Beneath it, no birth date, just a single stretched out dash. No death. Year, just waiting. I stumbled back. The world tilted, the air suddenly thick with heat. I tried to turn, to get back to the road, but I couldn't see where the path had come from. Every direction looked the same. Endless trees and crushed powder and whispering silence, and then came the others. They weren't loud. They weren't even visible at first. Just the soft shuffling of feet in dry leaves and the creak of something old moving without breath. I saw shadows first, stretching between trunks, sliding without shape. Then came the figures half formed, like smoke, poured into the outline of people. Some tall, some hunched. None of them touched the ground. They whispered names as they passed, not just mine. Others I didn't know. Men, women, children. Their voices layered over each other like thin plastic sheets. Some hissed, some whimpered. Some sounded like they were laughing through water. I walked backward, slow, trying not to breathe too loud. The nearest figure turned toward me. It had no face, just skin, stretched smooth over a skull-shaped form. And its head tilted, curious, like a dog hearing something distant. Then it grinned. Not with teeth. With something underneath, pushing against the skin until the shape of a mouth tore through. "Daniel," it said again. "We missed you." I ran. I didn't know where. Just deeper, I think. That's the sick part. That path, if you even want to call it that, twists you, makes you forget why you came or how to leave. The trees never end. The air never changes. And the farther you go, the more stones you start seeing. Unmarked at first. Then with initials. Then full names. Then photos carved from nothing into polished black rock. Some of them moved. Just a twitch. A blink. A turn of the head when you weren't looking. At some point I started screaming. Don't remember when. Just remember the ache in my throat. The blood on my tongue from biting it. I must have passed out because the next thing I knew, I was lying by my truck, head against the front tire, sun high overhead. My phone had service again. The GPS dot was back. The road behind the cemetery wasn't there. I mean that literally. No gravel, no gap in the trees. Just thick, unbroken forest, grown too close together to even push through. I left. Fast. Didn't look back. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I found myself waking up with dirt under my fingernails, gravel in my sheets. The same powder that coated my boots is in my laundry, stuck in the filter of my dryer. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still hear the whispers. Not just calling me back. They're waiting. There's a marker I pass on my way to work now. One I've never seen before, stuck behind the old high school football field. Just a plain white stone leaning against the fence. No name, no date. But every time I see it, I swear it's moved. Closer, and the space beneath that dash, it's a shrinking. They call it Sinner's Bridge for a reason, though nobody agrees on the details. Some say it got the name back in the 40s after a preacher drove his car into the creek below, taking his mistress and their unborn child with him. Others say it's because it was the last place a wanted man was seen alive before vanishing. His blood found smeared on the guardrail like someone had tried to write a name but didn't have the strength to finish. Whatever the origin, one thing stayed the same for decades. Locals say don't honk on that bridge. Not unless you want something to answer. Sinner's Bridge isn't much to look at. Just a skinny one-lane stretch of concrete laid over a trickle of brown water that rarely runs faster than a crawl. No lights, no signs. You only find it if you already know it's there, tucked into a bend off Farm Road 179 just south of Black Hollow. 100 feet, maybe less. You ease onto it like a tightrope, praying no one's coming the other way, though you never see another soul. Still, habit makes folks tap the horn once before crossing, just to be sure. But there's this story that went around when I was a kid. You hear it in whispers at gas stations and whispered dares on hot summer nights when boredom grows teeth. If you honk on that bridge and wait, sometimes you'll hear a second honk, not an echo. Not a bird or a car in the distance. A real horn, one that doesn't belong to your vehicle. It doesn't happen every time, but when it does, you'll get home and find muddy footprints on your back porch. Always leading in, never out. I never believed it. Not really. Until last October, when I went back home after nearly 10 years away. My mother had passed in August, left the house to me. A crooked little place set just outside town with a slanted roof and those crank windows that never quite shut all the way. The house smelled like cedar and mildew and old paint, the kind you don't notice until the house is quiet for long enough. Cleaning it out was going to take time, so I took a few weeks off work, drove in from Fort Worth. I didn't plan on staying long. I got in late around 1 a.m. The moon was high, pale, flickering behind a drift of clouds. I took the back way out of habit, following the old county roads like muscle memory. I almost missed the turnoff for Sinner's Bridge. Almost. The gravel crunched under my tires, and I eased around the bend, headlights spilling across the old concrete stretched like a stage light. Everything in me wanted to keep driving, but something it wasn't curiosity, not exactly something made me slow, made me stop. The stories came back then. That feeling of hearing them at age 12, flashlight. Under the chin, surrounded by nervous laughter. The warning not to honk, the dare to do it anyway. I sat there, hands on the wheel, foot resting on the brake. The radio was off. The engine purred like a sleeping animal. My finger moved almost on its own, tapping the center of the wheel just once. A short, dry honk echoed out into the dark. Nothing at first. Just the hum of the motor, the creak of the bridge as the car idled forward. I rolled slowly, watching the far end of the bridge approach in my high beams. Then it came, a second honk. Not mine, not an echo. It came from somewhere just behind the car, low and drawn out, like it was pushed through rusted pipes. It wasn't loud, but I felt it in my chest, the way you feel something watching you from the woods even when you can't see it. I whipped my head around. Nothing behind me but empty road and night. Still, my scalp crawled. I didn't linger. My foot hit the gas and I crossed the rest of the bridge in seconds, knuckles white against the wheel. I told myself it was my imagination. Maybe it was an echo, or a distant train, or my mind playing tricks on me after a long drive. But the feeling didn't go away. Not when I turned onto Miller's Creek Road. Not when I pulled up to the house. Not when I unlocked the door and stepped into that dusty silence that settles into a place after grief. I didn't even think about the footprints until the next morning. I was up at dawn, coffee in hand, walking out the back to check the old shed. When I noticed them, wet prints in the dirt, human, barefoot. They started at the edge of the woods, where the grass gave way to leaves and black soil. They moved in a near straight line, up the yard, past the busted rain barrel, right up to the back steps. There, they paused, one on the second step, one on the third, then nothing. No prints leading away. No sign of someone having waited. Just that the person or thing had come up to the back door and vanished. I stood there, staring, heart thudding. In my chest. The prints were small like a child's, but too long in the toe. Like the feet had stretched. I didn't sleep well that night. Every creak of the house sounded closer than it should have. Every groan of wood under settling weight made me glance toward the hall, the windows, the door. I tried to forget. I wanted to think I'd just seen something old. Maybe they'd been there the day before and I hadn't noticed. But 2 nights later, I heard it again. I was in bed, trying to read, when I heard the knock. Not on the front door. Not even the back door. Really, it came from the wall. The back wall. Right behind where the couch sat. Just 2 soft knocks. Like someone testing to see if I'd answer. I froze. Just laid there, holding my breath, waiting. Nothing followed. No footsteps. No voices. I got up finally, gripped the bed I kept under. The bed and walked the house with every light on. No broken windows. No signs of forced entry. I even checked the backyard. The night was thick and humid, the kind of heat that clings to your skin like fingers. The yard was empty. The prints were gone, but the next night, I heard something move in the kitchen. It wasn't the fridge, wasn't the pipes. I know those sounds. This was something dragging something wet. I stood at the bedroom door, listening, every instinct screaming at me to stay put. But I didn't. I crept out, barefoot, bat in hand, expecting to find an animal. Maybe a raccoon had gotten. Instead, I found the back door open, wide open. The screen door swayed slightly, tapping the frame. No wind. No storm. Just a long trail of muddy water leading across the tile. I followed it with my eyes. It led to the kitchen table. To the chair my mother used to sit in. The chair was turned ever so slightly, like someone had sat there just moments before and gotten up again. I closed and bolted the door. I mopped the floor with shaking hands. I told myself I was tired, that I hadn't really heard anything. That? Maybe I'd forgotten to latch the door. But the dreams started after that dot in them. I'm back on Sinner's Bridge, car idling. The second honk always comes. Then headlights appear behind me, impossibly close. They blind me in the mirror. I can't move. I can't breathe. And then something crawls across the bridge toward me, not walks, but crawls. A figure, pale and wet and broken, dragging its body forward like it doesn't know how legs work anymore. And just before it reaches the window, I always wake up. I stayed 3 more days. Each night, something new happened. The smell of pond water in the bathroom. The sound of someone whispering my name from the closet. And every morning, a new trail of muddy footprints always leading from the back door into the house. The last morning, the trail stopped right at my bedroom door. I left without packing, left the lights on, left the front door wide. I didn't care. I drove straight to Dallas and stayed in a motel for 2 nights before going home. That was 6 months ago. I haven't been back. I hired someone to clean out the house and sell it as is. I didn't even go to the closing. But some nights, if I'm up late and everything's too quiet, I'll hear it again, that second honk. Low, rusted, close. And when I check the back door, sometimes I'll find it unlocked, with just a hint of wet earth on the welcome mat. It started like any other evening drive across the flat West Texas stretch near Pecos, long after the sun had smothered the day in a hot orange glow and the sky faded into that violet-black bruising. Reggie Harlow had made the trip from Kermit to Fort Stockton dozens of times for work, sometimes in daylight, but mostly at night when the roads were empty and the wind whispered low across the plains. He didn't scare easy. The land out there felt old, sure older than maps, older than oil rigs, but not haunted. Until he took Dustjaw Highway. He wasn't even supposed to be near that road. His usual route down 18 had been blocked off just past a jackknife cattle hauler near Coyanosa. A cop with hollow eyes and a patch that looked stitched on crooked told him to detour west and follow the signs through the maze. Backroads. Reggie didn't argue. He just finished a 12-hour shift at the pipeline site and wasn't in the mood to wait behind a wrecker, so he turned west like the sign said. At first, it made sense. The roads curved gently through flatlands spotted with scrub and mesquite. A couple signs pointed ahead with vague arrows and nitrogen monoxide through traffic in peeling white paint. Then came a sharp turn with a sign that read Dustjaw HWY Nitrogen Monoxide Outlet. And after that, nothing made sense. The road narrowed quick, shoulder crumbling away into gravel. Reggie looked for another detour sign, anything to confirm he was still on a valid route. But every marker vanished the moment he passed the Dustjaw sign. Not one post, arrow, or reflector. His headlights reached maybe 30 feet ahead, and beyond that was black, dense, unnatural black. He figured it was just bad lighting or maybe a fog bank hanging low without moisture. But he didn't slow down. He just turned up the radio and tried to convince himself he wasn't nervous. It was when he looked at the clock and saw it was still 8:26 p.m. that something clenched in his stomach. It had been 8:26 for 30 minutes now? He smacked. The dashboard shook the old Chevy's digital clock, but the numbers didn't budge. His phone had no bars. No GPS. Just a loading wheel spinning like a kid's toy stuck in a puddle. The road curved again. Another bend. Another. Reggie started to feel like he was going in circles, though the scenery never repeated. The same dying grass. The same weathered barbed wire fence running along the ditch line. No houses, no driveways. Just a faint orange. dust that clung to his windshield like pollen, making everything ahead blurry and rust-colored. He wiped it off with the wipers, but it smeared worse, thick and grimy. Smelled like old clay and rot. That's when he passed the first car. It was parked sideways across a cattle gate. Doors flung open, hazards flashing. No one inside. A red coupe from the early 2000s, tires flat and engine still warm, judging by the shimmering heat haze rising from under the hood. He slowed down and rolled his window halfway. "Hey," he called. Nothing. Not even the wind answered. No cicadas. No crickets. Just his engine idling in the quiet. He pulled forward and around it, easing back onto the road. His tires rolled. Through something soft near the gate, a wet patch maybe. He didn't look down. He didn't want to know. A mile later, the radio cut to static. That was normal enough for a dead zone, but then the static began pulsing. Long, soft bursts. Like a breath. Inhale. Exhale. Like someone was on the other side, listening. Then came the whispering. It wasn't in the radio. It was inside the truck. Soft at first, like someone talking in another room behind a thin wall. Then clearer. Reggie gripped the wheel tighter as the voices grew louder. They weren't in English. They weren't in any language he knew. But they were coming from under. The seats, from the vents, from behind the dash. No matter how loud he turned the volume, they never went away. He checked his mirrors. That's when he saw the lights. A pair of headlights behind him. Far back. Not close enough to see the vehicle. Just the glow. They weren't there before. He was sure of it. He hadn't seen a soul for at least 40 minutes. Reggie sped up a little. The lights followed. They didn't gain. Didn't fall behind. Just held steady. He watched them for 10 minutes. They didn't blink. Didn't curve with the road. They just floated. Fixed in the distance. Like they weren't attached to anything at all. Then he blinked, and they were. Gone. When he turned his eyes back to the road, he nearly slammed the brakes. A woman stood dead center in his path, pale, motionless, wearing a long dress that looked stained, or maybe charred at the hem. Her hands were limp at her sides, her eyes wide. Her mouth open, but she didn't scream. Her face didn't change. Reggie swerved just in time, heart punching his ribs. When he checked the rear view, she was gone. He didn't stop. After that, the terrain changed. It shouldn't have. It was West Texas, flat, predictable. But now, the landscape dipped and rose like bad memory. The fences disappeared. The sky had no stars, just a deep indigo murk that swallowed his high beams. The road looked the same, but it wasn't. The dust on the windshield grew thicker, and something dark moved across it like fingers dragging across the outside, slow and deliberate. Reggie flinched and wiped it away, but there were no prints. Only more dust. He glanced at the clock again. 8:26. P.M. Still. Then he saw the sign. Welcome back, it read, carved into wood that looked centuries old. Beneath it, scrawled in fresh red paint, or maybe blood, you should have stayed home. And that's when the truck died. Engine off. Lights out. No sound. No wind. Just the hum of silence and the overwhelming sense of being watched. Not from the trees. There were no trees anymore. Just open land. And yet, eyes. Behind him. Beside him. Inside the cab, Reggie didn't wait. He opened the door, stumbled into the night air, and ran. No flashlight, no phone, just instinct and blind panic. He didn't know how long he ran, or where, only that when he stopped, he was standing in front of his own house, not the front. The driveway. His truck was already parked. Backwards. Every door. Open. Keys still in the ignition. And someone was in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel. Reggie stepped closer, afraid to look but unable to turn away. The figure didn't move. Just sat there, face turned toward the porch, motionless dot, then it smiled. And Reggie realized it had his face, only older dot, tired dot, and grinning with something behind its eyes that he had never felt before. A long shadow stretched from the figure's seat, curled out of the truck, and spilled across the lawn like black ink sliding uphill. Reggie turned to run, but his feet stuck. The ground had become soft again, like clay, like dust mixed with something warm. He looked down and saw handprints. Dozens of them, child-sized, adult, some half-formed, pressed into the earth, dragging toward the house. The porch light flickered on by itself, and the door opened inside. He heard the radio, still static, still breathing. Then he heard it again, 826p.m. forever. It's a stretch of county road most folks in Shelby County avoid after dusk, even if they don't admit why. Dogman Cut's not on any map anymore, wasn't even marked on the GPS when I drove it last October. It runs about 8 miles of cracked, serpentine asphalt through the pine thickets east of Timpson. Locals say the state stopped maintaining it back in the 90s after too many complaints and not enough proof. But I'd been running a storm damage inspection contract for a private firm out of Lufkin, and Dogman Cut was on my list. A real back road. Barely wide enough for one truck, much less two passing in opposite directions. No lights, no houses. Just blacktop, brush, and the occasional roadkill turning sour in the humidity. It was near dusk when I hit the first mile marker. An old wooden post leaning sideways with faded white paint that looked like it had been scratched by nails or claws maybe. I wasn't thinking much of it then. I had my clipboard, my flashlight, my beat-up Tacoma with a cracked left mirror, and a 6-pack of Mountain Dew keeping me upright. I'd been on the road since 5 that morning. The first odd thing was the vibration. Subtle at first. Like, maybe I'd run over a bad patch of road or my alignment was off. But it didn't fade. It pulsed. A low thrum that crept up from the tires into the steering wheel and into my arms. I glanced down at the dash, thinking maybe the engine was overheating. But everything looked normal. That's when I checked the rearview mirror. Nothing. Just trees, flickering shadows, and the faint twilight haze. But I swear on everything, I could feel something behind me. Not just the tremble. There was a presence, like when another car rides. Your tail just a little too close enough you can see their headlights glowing red in your rear view. Close enough your scalp tightens from the pressure of it. Only here, there were no lights. Nothing at all. I tapped the brakes once, thinking maybe it was a logging truck, maybe someone taking the same shortcut. No change. Just that persistent rumble like thunder underwater. I hit the gas a little harder. Road curved to the right, narrowing between 2 thick rows of cedar. I checked my mirror again, still nothing, but I saw it in my taillights just for a second. A flicker, like metal. Chrome, maybe. A rounded grill or a bumper. And red reflecting off something that should have been empty air. I leaned forward. Squinting, slowed down. That was my mistake. The vibration intensified, turning from a gentle hum to something deeper, something you could feel in your bones. My rear tires jostled. Something clinked in the bed of the truck. I gripped the wheel and stared straight ahead, trying to convince myself it was just nerves. Long day. Too much caffeine. Maybe the road was grooved weird and the tires were catching. Then the sound started. Not a horn, not an engine. It was a growl. Low and angry, like a diesel engine idling 2 feet from your bumper. But it had an edge to it, wet, organic, like something growling and gurgling all at once, trying to keep itself in check. I looked in the rear view again and saw nothing. But my heart was pounding and my neck felt damp. I rolled down my window. Big mistake number 2. The second the glass dropped halfway, that growl came through clean. No doubt now it wasn't mechanical. It had a throat. It had breath. And it was behind me. I punched the gas. The Tacoma lurched forward. I hit 40. 50. The trees blurred past in shadowed tunnels. But the growl kept up, the rumble matching every shift of my speed. I wanted to check the mirror again, but something in my gut screamed not to. Like if I really looked, I'd see something I couldn't unsee. Another curve. I took it fast. The tires squealed and the back end swerved slightly. I corrected. It breathed hard. The road opened just ahead, an old cattle gate and a patch of gravel where a tractor once sat, now rusted and overgrown. I hit the brakes hard and swung into the clearing. I needed to see it, needed to know what was chasing me. I put it in park. Threw open the door. Nothing. Just still trees. Windless. The kind of silence that's too quiet, too flat. No birds. Number. Crickets. No cicadas. The Tacoma ticked from cooling metal. And then I heard the growl again. Closer. But not from behind. It was to my right. Down low. I turned slowly, every hair on my neck stiff. There was nothing there, but the gravel moved. A slight tremor. I saw dust shift, like something heavy had stepped just out of view. I backed up, fumbled into the truck, slammed the door, locked it out of pure instinct. The growl deepened again, and this time I felt it through the glass. It pressed, somehow, through the barrier. My chest tightened like something was sitting on it. I yanked the wheel and floored it, tearing out of the clearing, back onto Dogman Cut. I didn't care about the shoulder, didn't care about the paint job. I just needed to be out, away. Road twisted again. I was doing 60 now, the Tacoma rattling under me, but it didn't matter. Because now the growl wasn't behind me, it was around me, inside the truck. In the vents, in the speakers, and something else, something worse. A voice, not in words, not human. It was wet, slurping, almost. But it answered. The growl pulsed and the voice replied, like two things speaking back and forth, from inside and out. I screamed. I couldn't help it. I drove blind, one hand on the wheel, the other slamming the radio, the AC. Anything that might be feeding it. And then everything shut off. Headlights. Dash. Power steering. Dead. My truck coasted. Slowing fast, I saw a shape. In front of me. It wasn't a truck. It was bigger. Round headlights flicked on huge ones, too high for any regular semi. They weren't white. They were orange, flickering, like burning coals. And in that light I saw something behind the beams. Chrome, yes, but rusted, curled, like teeth. Grills don't look like that. They don't have fangs. I was still rolling. Forward, and the shape wasn't moving. Then it vanished, just blinked out. I slammed on the brake again, fish-tailed, came to a lurching stop in the middle of the lane. I waited. No sound. No growl. No lights. And the power flicked back on. I turned the tone. Truck around. I didn't finish the survey. Didn't log it. I took the long way back through Garrison and Nacogdoches. Didn't stop until I hit my apartment in Lufkin. I sat in the truck with the engine running for half an hour before I worked up the nerve to turn it off. But that wasn't the end. 3 days later, I found gravel on my floorboard, not the kind from my driveway. The kind from that clearing. Then came the smell. Burnt rubber, oil, and something else. Something wet and sweet. Like DK. And last night, I woke up around 2:13 a.m. to a sound outside my window. It wasn't a growl. This time. It was the idle of a truck. Right below my bedroom window. I live on the 3rd floor. Old Railroad Pass wasn't on most maps. Not even the old ones you'd find in the glove box of a '78 Ford or tacked on a corkboard in the county clerk's office. But every local in Jasper County knew it. Some whispered about it. Some avoided it. Some, usually the drunks and the ones with nothing left to lose, went looking for it after dark like it was some kind of challenge, like it could dare them back into feeling something. It was a one-lane dirt road that split off from county. Route 218 just passed an old rusted-out mile marker you'd miss if you blinked. No sign, no warning. Just gravel crunching under tires and a line of pines that bent in like they were listening to your thoughts. It had rained the night. I took the turn. Lightning still flickered behind the clouds, far off over the pine barrens. The kind of electric storm that didn't make much noise but lit up the sky like a welding torch. My windshield wipers made that long dragging sound, rubber to glass, slow and rhythmic, like a heartbeat losing patience. I didn't plan to go down old railroad pass. Not consciously. But something pulled me off 218. I remember telling myself I needed to pull over and check my map, maybe get my bearings. I was heading to Lufkin from Beaumont, cutting through backroads because I couldn't stomach the highway. Too many bright lights, too much motion. I needed quiet. I needed to think, but I didn't stop. I just kept going down the pass, watching the trees fold over the road like ribs in a cage. The air felt wrong. Thick like it had mass. Not fog, not humidity, just heavy. The gravel beneath my tires gave way to patchy dirt, and the deeper I drove, the more the temperature seemed to shift, like driving through air-conditioned pockets and then back into sauna heat. My headlights, strong halogens, started flickering. I thought it was the alternator. That's when I saw the orange glow. It shimmered through the trees, at first faint and pulsing like a dying campfire. But the farther I drove, the brighter it got. It wasn't fire the way we think of it. It was too still. No crackling, no smoke. Just flame dancing in complete silence. And I swear, God help me, I heard music. Not loud, faint, like an old record playing in a sealed room at the far end of a house. Fiddle music, slow, drifting, sad. I slowed to a crawl and rolled down my window. That was when I smelled it. Burnt wood, old kerosene, and something else flesh. Not fresh, not rot. Just the faint whiff of long cooked, long dead. It didn't hit me hard. It was like memory smoke, barely there, but once you smelled it, you couldn't unsmell it. The house came into view like a hallucination. Old two-story farmhouse, white once, maybe. Peeling wood siding, porch half collapsed, but it was on fire openly, fully. Flames climbed the rafters and wrapped the front gable, pouring out of windows like a waterfall of orange. Yet the structure didn't fall. The flames didn't consume it. It just burned. I stopped maybe 30 yards back, left the car idling. The air was too still, no wind to carry the heat, but I could feel it, not on my skin inside my chest, like my heart was sitting too close to a bonfire. And in the upper window, I saw movement, a woman, pale dress, hair down past her shoulders, just standing there, not screaming, just watching. And then she waved, not a frantic wave, not a call for help, just a slow, deliberate motion, like she recognized me. I don't remember opening the door, but I was out of the car. My boots sank into soft mud. The ground was warm, like coals were buried just beneath the surface. My legs moved on their own. I walked forward, and with each step, the music got louder. Still faint, still behind the walls of time, but louder. A man's voice joined the fiddle, a soft lullaby. Sleep, little angel, the fire won't bite, close your eyes and wait for night. I reached the porch. The boards didn't creak, didn't even burn. I stepped onto them like stepping into a dream. The door was gone, just a blackened frame and a hallway that led into flickering nothing. Inside, it looked lived in, not burned. Furniture sat upright. A cross hung above the mantel. A plate of something, pork and beans? on a table in the corner. But it all wavered in the flames like heat mirage, and every few seconds it blinked, flashed the charred ruin, flashed the untouched home, flash flames curling the edges of a photograph. My stomach turned. A girl sat at the top of the stairs. Couldn't have been older than 10. Hair in pigtails, bare feet. She was singing. Her lips moved with a lullaby. She pointed at me, then back behind her. And then she disappeared, vanished mid-motion like someone flipped the projector off. I turned to leave. I wanted to leave. I swear I did. But I couldn't move. Something pressed on my spine like a hand between my shoulder blades. And then I felt it heat on the back of my neck. The fire finally touching me, but it wasn't burning me. It was holding me, gripping me like fingers made of smoke. I looked up and saw them people, dozens of them, in the windows, in the doorways, lined along the upstairs landing, men, women, children, all silent, all waving, and all wrong. Their skin looked dry, brittle, their eyes too wide, too bright, too knowing. Some were mouthing words. I couldn't hear them, but I could tell what they were saying. Join us, my legs buckled. I hit the porch again, but it was different now, hot. The board sizzled beneath me. I scrambled to my feet, heart slamming in my ears. My car still sat in the gravel. Engine idling, headlights dim. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't breathe. I just ran. And when I hit the road, when my boots struck gravel again, everything stopped. No flame. No house. Just trees. Just night. I turned in a slow circle. No orange glow, no heat. Just the chirp of crickets and the rumble of my idling engine. I got in and drove, tires spitting gravel as I floored it. Didn't stop until I hit a gas station 20 miles south. I looked in the rearview 100 times on that stretch, expecting anything to follow. Nothing ever did. But the next morning, when I walked out of the motel I'd collapsed in, something caught my eye. My windshield. Someone had drawn something in the condensation. AHANDPRINT. Small dot like a child's, and written beneath it, in long, uneven letters, still burns. I asked around town, old-timers mostly. One woman, Miss Clara, told me her cousin married a boy from up near Old Railroad Pass. His name was Samuel Teague. His whole family died in a house fire back in '74. Folks said it was an accident, maybe lightning. Others said something worse. No bodies were ever found. Just ash and melted glass. The thing is, the house was demolished years ago, bulldozed down to concrete. Nothing left, but every few years someone sees it. Usually around storm season. Always at night. And they always say the same thing. It wasn't just fire they saw. It was people. Waving, smiling, waiting. It was a busted stretch of road out past Hemphill, a forgotten gravel chute that peeled off County Road 34 and snaked through a hollow where the trees hung too low and the air felt thick even in January. Folks in Sabine County called it Crybaby. Spur, and not many people could tell you why. There were the usual stories: teenage girls dumped in the woods, a wrecked school bus no one ever officially reported, a weeping woman seen in the rain, but mostly, folks just said the place made your skin crawl. The kind of place where birds stopped singing and your cell signal dropped dead the second your tires crunched onto it. Most folks only drove it once and only during the day. The smart ones didn't go back. Jack wasn't smart. He was hauling. A queen mattress in the bed of his old Chevy and following his GPS's backroad directions to a guy who said he'd pay cash. The shortcut shaved 15 minutes off the drive, and Jack didn't have 15 minutes to spare. Gas was low. He hadn't eaten. He was running late. That was how it started. He hit Crybaby Spur around 5:47 p.m., still light but with the kind of thin gray light that starts to rot out around the edges. The sky had gone hazy. The sun, nowhere to be seen, cast everything in a flat, colorless film. The trees formed a long, narrow canopy above the road, knotty limbs stretching out like bones. Dust kicked up behind his tires, and the Chevy rumbled along like it wasn't too happy about the terrain. The first odd thing happened 2 minutes in. The radio turned on. That was strange enough on its own. He'd yanked the fuse weeks ago when the volume knob started adjusting itself, but there it was. Static. Pure, fuzzy static. Jack frowned and reached for the dial, but it wouldn't shut off. The power button stuck, no response. He smacked it with the heel of his hand. Still nothing. Just the soft hiss of white noise, low at first. Harmless. He chalked it up to a wiring short. Maybe the bouncing had reconnected something. It was an old truck. Strange things happened, but then the static shifted. It developed depth. Layers. Not just white noise, but something beneath it, like someone breathing underwater. Then a whisper. So soft he almost didn't catch it. Jack. He blinked. Eyes flicked to the dashboard. Maybe he'd imagined it. He turned the volume down again. No response. Static hissed back. Louder now. Clearer. Then, Jack. That time it was sharp. Not just clear, but close. Not a whisper behind the static, but a voice in the cab, in the speakers, in his ear. Low and wet and thick, like the speaker's mouth was full of something heavy. He slammed on the brakes. Gravel spat out. The truck skidded a little sideways. The mattress groaned in the bed behind him. Silenced. The radio snapped off. He sat there, hands tight on the wheel, engine ticking beneath him, listening to the wind. But there wasn't any wind. Just stillness. Heavy. Hollow. Jack turned the truck off, turned it back on. The radio didn't come back. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding and eased. Back onto the road. Stupid. Just a glitch. Maybe stress. He hadn't slept much lately. Maybe it was just one of those strange little moments when your brain gets ahead of itself. Then came the voices. Not a single voice. Voices. As if the static had birthed them, or maybe just opened upon the door. They came back about half a mile in. No warning this time. Just bam. Radio crackled to life, louder, shriller, and there they were. Dozens of overlapping murmurs, like a crowd whispering all at once, none of it making sense. Men and women and children, some crying, some laughing, a few sounding angry, all speaking just under the level of understanding, like if you concentrated hard enough, you might make out a word. He turned the dial. Nothing happened. He pulled over again, this time next to a stand of trees black with shadow. Turned the truck off. Pulled the keys. The radio stayed on. The voices got louder. Jack. He sat frozen, mouth dry. Something about the way his name sounded now, it wasn't just a voice. It was voices, plural, saying it in unison, calling him. The kind of call that pulled. Like gravity. Like a string inside his chest being tugged. Not hard but persistent. Jack glanced in the rearview mirror, and that's when he saw the figures. They stood just behind the truck. 7, maybe 8 of them. Pale. Thin, too tall, too still. No faces. Just vague shapes in the haze, like someone had smudged the air. They didn't move. They didn't wave. They were just there. Watching. He blinked. They were gone. The radio shut off again. Jack put the truck in gear and floored it. The gravel road twisted and narrowed. The trees felt closer. It should have been. A short spur 3, maybe 4 miles tops, but his dash said he'd been driving 15 minutes. No sign of pavement ahead. No sign of anything. Just more trees. More road dot, and now the static had returned. No voices this time. Just static, loud and clear, and growing harsher with every bend in the road dot. Then came the music dot, old, broken music. A waltz, maybe, or a lullaby. Tinny and warped like a child's music box left out in the rain. It played low at first, underneath. The static then pushed its way forward like something crawling up through water dot. Then the voices returned, only now they were singing dot the same lullaby. He didn't recognize the words. They weren't English, but the cadence was clear. Nursery rhyme rhythm, childlike, sweet and wrong, and then, stop the car. Jack flinched, slammed the brakes. Stop the car, Jack. He hadn't touched the radio. He hadn't said his name aloud, but the voice knew it. Knew him, knew how to sound like him, because that last voice, it was his own, whispered back at him, distorted slightly, but unmistakably him. A mimic, a reflection. Something inside the radio that had learned. Jack looked out the windshield. The road ahead was black. Not just dark black. Like light had stopped working. Like the world ended 5 feet in front of the bumper. He shifted into reverse. Nothing. The gear didn't catch. The truck didn't move. Engine hummed. Tires spun, but no motion. The radio clicked off. Then a voice whispered from behind him, not from the speakers. From the bed of the truck. Jack. He didn't turn. He couldn't. His fingers curled around the wheel so tight they bled. Another voice joined the first, then another, all around the truck, like a choir of ghosts pressed up against the glass. Then something knocked on the window. Not hard. Just a soft, deliberate tap, like a finger. Jack squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them, the world was bright. Morning. He was parked on the side of a paved road just outside of town. Engine off. Keys in the ignition. The mattress was gone. So was his wallet, the radio? Still playing. Only one voice now, familiar, soft. His mother. She'd been dead 4 years. She was singing the lullaby she used to hum when he was small. He turned the radio off. It stayed on. The static came back. And behind it, her voice said, "Where?" "Not done, Jack." Then the music started over, and the truck door unlocked itself. Crows don't fly at night. Anyone who's lived out in the woods or on the edges of farmland knows that. They roost in groups. Murder, they call it, which seems like someone's idea of a joke, and they huddle in silence once the sun goes down. But something about Church Hollow Road messes with the order of things. You could drive through there at 3 in the morning and watch them rise like shadows from the trees, beating their wings against the moonless sky, and they'll follow you. Not over you, not ahead. Beside you, matching your speed. And they stare. I didn't believe any of this when Lizzie first told me about it. She had that nervous way of telling stories that made even true things feel made up, like she was testing how much you'd let yourself believe. I thought it was a campfire story, something passed around by teenagers bored of ditchweed and ditch water. But Lizzie was crying when she told me. Her hands were trembling, and when she touched her car, she flinched like it burned. She had gone down that road to pick up her little brother from a party. Nothing unusual. It was past midnight, and she took the shortcut through Church Hollow to shave off 10 minutes. She remembered seeing 1 or 2 crows perched on the rusted sign at the road's mouth. Church Hollow Road scrawled in white on an old green panel, rust gnawing at the corners like dried blood. The birds didn't move, not at first. But the moment her tires hit the gravel past the shoulder, the first one launched into the air. Then another and another. "They flew right next to me," she whispered, "right beside the driver's side window, like pacing me. Wings stretched wide, gliding without flapping. I looked right into its eye and it didn't blink. When she got home, she said the sides of her car were scratched. Deep, jagged lines that ran from the front wheel well to the back like something with talons had dragged them across the metal. She had feathers in the wiper blades. Some stuck between the mirrors. And there was this stench rotted meat and something coppery soaked into the plastic trim. Her little brother never saw a thing. Said he'd fallen asleep before she even left the party. I didn't believe her. Not really. But 2 nights later, I went down that road myself. Not because I wanted to prove her wrong, I wasn't that much of an ass, but because there was this strange itch in the back of my brain, like something unfinished. Curiosity, maybe, or something older. Church Hollow isn't long. About 5 miles of winding blacktop, patchy with gravel and old tar strips, flanked by woods so thick they swallow your headlights. No houses, no lights. Just those damn trees leaning in too close, like they're listening. You start to notice how quiet it gets the moment you turn in. Your radio fades to static. Not cuts out, just this slow, soft decay into nothing. And even with the windows rolled up, it feels like something's pressing on the glass. I drove 30, slow enough to hear the gravel pop under the tires, fast enough to keep moving. I didn't see anything at first. Then the crows started. First, 1, just a shadow overhead, then 2, then 4. By the time I hit the bend near the old church ruins, I had a dozen of them circling the car. Some flew beside the driver's side mirror, one close enough that I could see its beak open and close like it was speaking, but there was no sound. Nothing but wind dot, and then I felt it. Something sharp, like claws skittering across the roof. Not once, not just a single tap like a branch. Again and again. The sound of talons dragging across metal. My rearview mirror filled with wings and glinting eyes. I hit the gas. I didn't stop until I hit the main road again. No cars out there. Just me and the empty stretch of Texas road under a moonless sky. When I got out and checked the car, nearly vomited dot feathers were wedged in every crevice, the door handles, the windshield, even the fuel cap. And the scratches weren't shallow. They looked like gouges. Deep, uneven tears in the paint and metal, as if something with curved claws had tried to peel the car open like a can. One of the window's rear passenger side had a smear. Oily and faint, like something pressed a palm or a wing or something. Worse against it, and there was that smell, not just rot. Not roadkill. Something else. Like burnt feathers and something sweet and foul, like death left out in the sun. I parked in my garage and didn't drive for 3 days. I tried to scrub the scratches, the blood-colored streaks, the feathers. Nothing came off completely. I told myself it had to be a prank. Kids, a bad joke. Maybe the road's got some weird local birds and I hit a nest. I knew it was a lie even as I said it. A week later, Lizzie disappeared. Her car was found parked at the mouth of Church Hollow. The keys still in the ignition. Lights on. Driver's side door open. Inside, nothing. Not her phone, not her purse, not her. Just feathers. Hundreds of them. The floor mats, the seat, the damn glove compartment feathers crammed into every space like stuffing from a torn-up pillow, and blood. Not a lot, but enough to leave a line from the seat to the door. Like she'd been dragged out. No footprints, just scratches. Deep grooves in the dirt like talons or claws or maybe fingers dragging her away. The cops didn't even tape it off. Said there was no sign of foul play. Said she probably ran away, but people started whispering, saying they'd seen the crows. Again, not just at night now, during the day too, perched on power lines outside the school, in the trees behind the gas station, circling slow and silent over parked cars. And every car that parked near Church Hollow came back scratched. Some folks even said they'd found feathers in their homes, inside sealed garages. One guy said he woke up with them scattered across his bed, I moved. Didn't sell the house, just left. My car wouldn't start the morning I tried to leave. Not until I'd burned every feather I'd collected in the fireplace and poured salt over the tires. I still found 3 crows perched on my hood that night, just watching me, silent, but I got out. I don't take country roads anymore. Don't drive at night unless I have to. I keep a crow feather taped to the inside of my glove box now, as a warning, or maybe a bargain. I don't know, that all I do know is this: if you ever find yourself near Church Hollow, don't go in at night. Don't look out your window. Don't slow down. And for the love of God, don't let them match your speed. If they do, they've picked you. And if they've picked you, they'll follow. The first time Jesse heard of Widowmaker Road, he was 12 and eavesdropping on his uncle and a pair of his drinking buddies out in the barn. The name alone made his skin crawl, but it was the way grown men lowered their voices when talking about it that really unsettled him. One of them claimed his cousin saw a woman in the back seat through the rearview mirror just sitting there, lips moving, hands folded in her lap. The cousin pulled over, threw open every door, but there was no one there. That cousin moved too. El Paso the week after and never came back. Jesse never forgot the name. And even after 2 decades, when he moved back to Navarro County and took a job repairing communication lines for the state, he remembered every word of that story, especially the part where they said you only saw her if you drove the whole stretch. All 15 miles. No stops. He didn't think about the road again until he saw the work order in his truck's clipboard. Replace 2 damaged telephone poles on County Route 37, sector marked W. Maker. He stared at the paper a while, then pulled out his phone and double-checked the county grid. Widowmaker Road was a real designation CR37, cut clean through a dense patch of rural brushland just south of Groesbeck. No houses along the way, no gas stations, just long sweeping bends of cracked pavement, through barbed wire ranchland and post oak trees that leaned too close to the shoulder. The road started off quiet, too quiet in fact. His service truck clunked over the first cattle grate and rolled under a rusting green sign, so faded it barely read Widowmaker Road. That's when the phone signal died, just blinked out like it had never existed. Jesse wasn't surprised. Cell reception out in these parts was spotty even on the best of days. He marked the first pole on the map-a-tilt about 6 miles in. Beyond that was another pole slanted like a drunk man's spine, leaning hard into the shoulder. Jesse had made peace with backroads long ago. He didn't mind being alone. But Widowmaker felt different. It wasn't just remote. It was abandoned. The kind of place that made you realize how far away from the rest of the world you really were. Trees pressed in close, vines creeping down like fingers. Road signs leaned too far to one side. Someone had shot holes in the old reflector markers. The first 6 miles passed in eerie silence. The only sound was the gravel pinging off the undercarriage. He found the first pole easily. It was cracked at the base and creaked when the wind kicked up. Jesse parked on the shoulder, killed the engine, and got to work. It was about an hour and a half of sweat, bolts, and splinters, but it went smooth enough that it was on the way to the second pole that he noticed something strange. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, maybe the sun glinting off the mirror wrong, but it wasn't. In the rear view, there was someone sitting in the bed of his truck. He jerked the wheel in shock and slammed the brakes. The truck rocked to a stop and he whipped around in his seat. The bed was empty. Bone dry, just a few tools, and a coil of yellow cable. He leaned out the window and scanned the brush on both sides of the road. Nothing. Not even birdsong. Just the whisper of wind through trees that never seemed to stop swaying. Trying to laugh it off, Jesse turned the key, but the engine gave a hard click and nothing else. He muttered a curse, climbed out, and checked under the hood. Everything looked fine. Battery tight. No corrosion. He climbed back in, tried again, and this time it roared to life like normal. He didn't tell himself, he imagined it. Jesse wasn't the type. He'd seen too many things over the years. Shadows that didn't move right. Voices on the radio that didn't match the stations. Once, a pair of legs dangling from an overpass, but when he looked again, the space was empty. This was Texas. Strange things baked under this sundown. By the time he reached the second pole, dusk had started bleeding into the sky. He worked fast. Something in his gut told him not to be on this road after full dark. The new pole was set just as twilight hit, painting the horizon with muddy orange and bruised purple. Jesse climbed back into the truck and sat for a moment, watching the rear view. Nothing. Just the tree line. He pulled back onto the road. That's when she appeared. Not a scream, not a flash. Just suddenly there. She was in the back seat, perfectly centered in the rearview mirror. Pale face, black dress, hands clasped together like she was in prayer. Her eyes were open, wide and unblinking, but she never looked up. Her lips were moving, fast and silent, as if reciting something she'd memorized a long time ago. Jesse's foot froze on the pedal. He couldn't look back only at the mirror. She didn't blink, didn't twitch, just kept mouthing those words. He thought to stop, but the story said not to. They always said the same thing: drive the stretch. Don't pull over. Don't. Stop. He gripped the wheel tighter and drove. The trees leaned in. The road twisted. His headlights caught shapes between the trunks. Not animals, not people. Just shapes. Some tall, some hunched, watching, as if the moment he slowed, they'd step out and take his place. The woman in the mirror never moved, except for her lips. Now he could make out a sound, not words, exactly, more like a low hum, like static. If it had rhythm. His vision blurred at the edges, and his chest tightened with a pressure that felt like drowning. At mile marker 14, Jesse began to cry. He didn't remember starting. The tears just ran freely, as if something inside had been opened. He gritted his teeth, tried to hold the wheel steady. But he was shaking now, his whole body trembling with something beyond fear. It was grief. Raw, blistering grief. For what? He didn't know. That's when she looked up. In the mirror, her eyes met his, and they were black. Not like bruises, not empty. Black like depth. Like something ancient had bored through her skull and hollowed out what used to be. Human, she smiled, and then she said it, his name, Jesse. Soft, deliberate, not in his ears, but inside his skull. Like it was being whispered directly into the folds of his brain. He screamed. For the first time in decades, Jesse Langley screamed like a child. The final curve appeared 15 miles in. The trees broke. The sky opened. Widowmaker Road spat him back out onto Route 84 with a lurch. And she was gone. He slammed the truck to a stop on the shoulder and stumbled out, retching into the dirt. His legs gave out and he sat there under the stars for a long time, shaking. When he finally looked back inside the cab, the rearview mirror was shattered. A single crack ran down the middle, clean and precise, almost like a parting line. The next morning, Jesse filed for reassignment. 3 months later, he packed his bags and left Navarro County for good. Moved north to Sherman, where the roads were wide and well lit and the only things in the rear view were headlights and dust. But sometimes on cold nights, when the wind is still and he happens to glance into a mirror, he swears he sees her. Reflection behind him. Just for a second. Pale. Still. And smiling.